Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto put in a special team and trained by enigmatic Umbu for Chunin exams part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Just over 10 years since the sealing of the Kyubi. Tsunade sat idly behind the large wooden desk of the Hokage, staring balefully at the stack of papers in front of her. She still wasn't sure what made her accept the offer to be Hokage after the Yandame's passing. Perhaps some sick and twisted sense of duty, but that was now irrelevant. Sensei had been right. The village needed a strong leader, not an old man or a pervert. She sighed aloud and poured herself a small cup of sake. This year's graduates were proving harder to place than she had anticipated. A lot of the genin passed the initial exam, but only a 9 look like they stand a chance of actually staying on as active genin, she thought as she slowly twirled a strand of her blonde hair between her fingers. Leaning back, she took a sip of her sake and absent-mindedly stroked Tantan's head. A knock at the door woke her from her reverie as she quickly hid the alcohol under her desk. Enter, she called out to whoever was standing outside her door. In walked a rather tired-looking jounin. The taller man wore his hatai angled to cover his left eye. His silvery gray hair stood up and a thin black neoprene mask covered the lower portion of his face. Tsunade-sama, Kakashi said as he bowed his head slightly. I was wondering about the team assignments that you are making for the new genin. Tsunade set down the sheet of paper that she had been working on and looked at the gray-haired scarecrow. And what were you wondering about exactly? She said, knowing full well what he wanted. You see, there are a couple of students who graduated from the academy that I would like to train. You see, I owe both of their families a great deal, but he was cut off from finishing his sentence. Both Sasuke and Naruto are already placed. Kakashi, you can't have them. Kakashi slammed his hand down on the table. Losing his cool was unusual for him, but this was something he wasn't going to let go without a fight. And why the hell not? Sasuke is considered to be a genius in taijutsu and Naruto is a ninjutsu genius. I'm obviously the best sensei for either of them. Tsunade shook her head. Normally I would agree with you, but… Without finishing her sentence, she picked up one of the various papers on her desk and handed it to Kakashi. Kakashi looked at it closely. It was a topographical map of a small country just south of the borders of Fire Country. It was marked with several red circles, and had some note written in a code on the side. Kakashi stared confusedly at the map. What does Ricefield Country have to do with me not being able to train Sasuke and Naruto? Tsunade pulled the map away, placing back on the pile. It appears my old teammate has not been sitting idly over the past 2 decades. That's a map that Jiraiya just sent me. Those red circles that are on there are all locations of bases to a new shinobi village called Otogekure. As it stands, they're too weak to attack any of the major countries, but that won't last long. Orochimaru seems to have been collecting a very large number of ninja to him. He intends to raise Konoha to the ground. Tsunade picked up the sheet of paper she had been looking at when Kakashi first came in. Which is why the Shinobi Council has given me this request. Kakashi read the paper. The Honorable Shinobi Council believes that there is a need for a new free response team to be assembled from the upcoming graduates of the academy. With the rising threat of this new Otogekure, we feel that it is within the village's best interest to create a new elite team. The various councilmen signed the bottom of the paper. Kakashi's eyebrows raised in surprise. The council still has a say in what teams are made? I thought you effectively cut them off from anything like that. Tsunade sighed and pulled her bottle of sake out of its hiding place along with 2 of the small saucers. Pouring a cup for both of them, she motioned for him to take a seat. She sipped lightly at the hard drink before sighing. Well, in reality they can only request that we make the team. In all honesty, they've requested one nearly every year. Just now they actually have a reason to. Which means I can't just ignore it. Kakashi looked confused. Why would you refuse to make the teams? Every free response team brought a lot of good publicity to our city. Tsunade sighed wearily and rubbed her forehead. You sound just like the council now. Seeing that he didn't comprehend, she chose to elaborate. Yes, the publicity that they might bring to the village is normally regarded as something good. But have you ever heard that there is such a thing as too much of a good thing? Right now we are situated as the most powerful of all the ninja villages. But it is a precarious position to be in. Kakashi looked mildly confused. I'm afraid that I don't quite follow you there. Tsunade shrugged and continued. Look at it this way, Kakashi. How many times have you been on a mission and somebody tries to kill you just because you are Sharingan no Kakashi? Kakashi, not sure where she was heading, answered. I don't know, quite a few I suppose. Why? Tsunade, looking down at her desk, continued. Now imagine that each one of those would-be killers wasn't just by himself, but was an entire country, and they were fighting together because you took too much away from them. Kakashi's eyes widened as he grasped what she was trying to convey to him. So you think that if you were to create this team, the publicity might push some people over the edge and push them to work with Orochimaru? Tsunade nodded her head. To make matters even more difficult, the council doesn't know any of the details about Orochimaru, so as far as they are concerned, this village is invincible and should flaunt its power. And now I have no reason to stop them. Kakashi shrugged. So make the team, what's the worst that happens? Tsunade sighed and handed him a list of all 9 of the graduating genin that were expected to actually make the grade. The problem is that they are only requesting the team so that they gain more power in their respective clans. It's well known that all the past free response teams rise to greatness. Look at what it did for the Yamanaka, Akimichi, and Nara clans. Prior to the Inoshikicho team, they were relatively unknown. But their prowess in battle brought them up to the point that they are all on the council. And they weren't even that good of a free response team. Kakashi sat back in the chair and looked at the list that Tsunade had handed him. Ah, now I see the problem. Indeed, almost all of the names on the list were clan heirs. He noted them briefly in his mind. Well, there are the Yamanaka, Akimichi, Nara, Hyuga, Inuzuka, Aburame, and Uchiha heirs. He shook his head lightly. I guess Sasuke isn't much of a heir in anything but title, so it's not like he's vying for the spot. So that leaves him, and? Kakashi nodded his head in sudden understanding. So you're making Sasuke, Naruto, and that Haruno girl into the free response team? Tsunade poured herself another drink. That's the idea anyways. Naruto and Sasuke have no families, so there is no one but themselves with anything to gain from this. Haruno Sakura is really the only exception, but even her family is most gone, killed by the Kyuubi. All she has left is an elderly grandmother who taught her genjutsu as a child. Kakashi nodded his head. So you're covering all 3 of the basics in the team. You have Sasuke as the primary taijutsu fighter, Naruto for ninjutsu, and Sakura for medical and genjutsu. Tsunade tipped the drip back and slammed the small cup on the table. Exactly. Kakashi, setting his empty cup on the table, replied. So explain again why I can't teach this team. My team was originally supposed to be a free response team, and with my knowledge, I doubt you can find someone else better for the job. Tsunade smirked. That's where you're wrong, Kakashi. There is someone who is much more suited for this job. Kakashi looked a little surprised, but replied snidely. And who would that be? A small cough alerted Kakashi that there was someone else standing in the doorway. That would be me. Naruto was running down the streets towards the academy, his non-reflective hitai tied proudly around his head. The special forehead protectors were only given to the top students in each particular field of the shinobi. Sasuke team had gotten the taijutsu one, Sakura got the genjutsu one, but he had beaten them all at ninjutsu. He smiled at the memory flashback. The class was standing on one of the larger fields that were situated alongside of the academy. They were each given turns to show at least 3, but no more than 5 different ninjutsu. They were scored on difficulty and their level of proficiency. Naruto smirked at what he had planned. He impatiently played with the handle of the brand new katana that he bought. In all reality, the sword was a lot longer than what someone his size would normally use, but he didn't want to use just any sword when he grew up. He wanted a nodachi. Iruka was talking to whatever random student that had been unable to complete 3 ninjutsu. The academy trained every student to use the kawarimi, henge, and bunshin, replacement, transformation, and clone techniques, respectively, but it was expected of the student to learn at least 1 or 2 on their own. Uzumaki Naruto called out Iruka. Finally, Naruto said aloud as he walked past his instructor. Iruka nodded to him when he saw that Naruto was ready. Okay, Naruto, you know the rules. Between 3 to 5 jutsus. Anything past the 5th won't count. You have 5 minutes to complete the series. Naruto nodded his head. Your time starts now, Iruka yelled. Without missing a beat, Naruto formed a cross-shaped hand sign. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone. In a small puff of smoke, 5 identical Narutos stood next to the original. Each one quickly drew their katana off their back and swung it down, exclaiming Futon, Kamaitachi no Jutsu, slashing wind, and 6 invisible blades of wind tore across the training grounds and cut 6 different trees in half. 2 Naruto mentally counted before continuing. Naruto quickly sheathed his sword, his clones following along, and began making signs for his next technique. Katan, Hausenka no Jutsu, Immortal Phoenix Fire. In seconds, a small rain of 2-foot-wide fireballs hammered against the newly felled trees, quickly igniting their branches. 3 he counted again. Once again the 6 Narutos began to fly through seals. Futon, Daitapa no Jutsu, Great Breakthrough. Instantly a great gale flew across the field, blowing over many of the academy students. The instructors anchored themselves with chakra as the incredible wind just blew past them. The burning trees quickly turned into a small inferno that was being fed by the wind. As soon as the wind gust stopped, Iruka saw Naruto begin making signs for his 5th and final jutsu. Naruto began gathering an enormous amount of chakra, for a genin, dispelling his clones. After near 10 seconds of gathering the chakra, he slammed his hands to the ground yelling. Doton, Yomi Numa, Swamp of the Underworld. Thick brown and black mud began to bubble around the burning logs, pulling them just underneath the earth's surface. Iruka looked over at the blonde student. His hands were still on the ground as he kept channeling chakra into the technique. When only a few branches remained above the surface of the ground, Naruto cancelled the technique and dropped onto his backside. Breathing laboriously, he looked at Iruka. So, how did I do? Iruka smiled. Well, your control over the wind and fire techniques was excellent, but I would say that earth is probably not an element that you're aligned with. You could have seriously caused yourself some harm using that technique. Naruto waved the man off. Already knew that, but I meant the exam? Iruka sighed. I highly doubt anyone else is going to trump that one, Naruto. Which is good, it makes up for your abysmal genjutsu score. Naruto smirked. That was the idea. End flashback. Naruto continued running towards the academy with a bright smile on his face. The villagers all scowled at him as he jumped overhead, but the other shinobi generally left him alone. He would even admit that ninjutsu was the only thing that he was actually good at. Granted, he was passable in taijutsu, but he was nothing special. He all-out sucked at genjutsu. He could break out of most of the simpler ones with a really good chakra pulse, but he couldn't use even some of the simplest techniques. The only other place he ever showed any promise was in kenjutsu, but that was pointless at the academy. He quickly made his way into the academy, and took his normal seat alongside Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke Team Naruto greeted as he sat down at the table. Sasuke only grunted a response, apparently in no mood for conversation. Naruto thought about calling him out on it, but decided against it. His pride was still a little bit sore from their match in the exams yesterday. During the taijutsu portion, he was matched against Sasuke in the 4th round, and it hadn't been pretty. Thinking about it though, Naruto snickered. Sasuke may have beaten him at taijutsu hands down. But nothing was funnier than watching Sakura make Kiba run head first into a tree during the genjutsu portion, without even having made any movement outside of a couple of hand seals. Glancing around, Naruto could see at least 30 people seated around the room. Several spots left open from students that had been unable to complete one or more portions of the exams. After a short wait in relative peace, their lead instructor, Iruka, walked through the door with several sheets of paper in his hands. Naruto anxiously leaned forward, waiting for the man to begin talking. Congratulations on passing the Genin exams yesterday. He started. I am proud that so many of you were able to meet the rigorous standards that Hokage-sama has set for the graduating classes. He went to continue talking, but the door into the classroom slid open one more time. Standing in the door was a young-looking buxom woman, wearing a green overcoat with the word Godame on the back. Iruka quickly bowed to the woman. Hokage-sama. I wasn't expecting you. He remained slightly bowed. The Hokage waved him off. I was just hoping to give a short speech to some of our newest genin, she replied calmly. Of course, Hokage-sama, Iruka responded quickly. The woman walked towards the center of the room and removed the large red formal headwear of the Hokage and placed it on the desk. Congratulations to all of you. You are all about to start on a long and toilsome journey that will likely take the rest of your lives. Many of you will not make it through alive. You are entering the rank of the elites, the shinobi. Whether you have not realized it yet, or you are just avoiding it. The fact is, that at some time in your life, this country will call upon you to fight. To fight for it, to kill for it, and to die for it. She let the words hang there for a second before continuing. All the world around you is watching you, waiting on bated breath to see who is ready. Who among you is ready to go on this journey? It is not for me to answer. I am only here to give you a few words of wisdom. You don't get very far in this life without having to be brave an awful lot. Because we all have our frightening moments and difficult trials, and we don't have much of a choice but to get through them, and it takes a lot of bravery to do that. The most important thing about bravery is this: it's not about not being scared, it's about being scared and doing it anyway. That's bravery. There will come a time when you are beaten, broken, and no longer able to continue. It's at those times that I want you to all remember these words. She added another small pause for dramatics. When you cannot walk, you crawl. And when you find that you can no longer crawl, then you find someone to carry you. Tsunade pulled out a scroll that she had tucked away inside of her overcoat. Here I have a list of teams that I have put together. Together with them, you will either live or die. Ultimately, the decision is your own. For those of you that cannot accept this fate, you may leave now. Just like with every other class, all the students remained in their seats. She nodded very well. With that, she tossed the scroll to Irika, put her hat back on, and strolled out of the room. Irika unrolled the scroll and began calling off names. Naruto didn't bother to listen to the first half dozen or so teams. They were inconsequential. It was common knowledge that very few of them would ever make it past Genin. Finally, Irika began getting into the higher numbers. Team 8, Hyuga Hinata, Aburaim Shino, and Inuzuka Kiba, your sensei will be Yuhi Kurinai. Naruto nodded his head. A tracking/recon team. Team 9 is still in rotation, so Team 10 will be comprised of Yamanaka Ino, Naro Shikamaru, and Akimichi Tsuji. Your sensei will be Sarutobi Asuma. With that, Irika rolled up his scroll and placed it on the table. Naruto and Sasuke both sat up and shared a look. Looking around, they could see that Sakura was also wondering what was going on. Naruto was about to voice his concern, but a sharp look from Irika told him to leave it be. Your senseis will be waiting for you on the main academy training grounds. Please get together with your teams and make your way there. All the students quickly jumped to their feet and grouped together before running out the door. Each and every one of them eager to begin their career as a shinobi. As the students were running out, Irika calmly walked in front of where Sasuke and Naruto were seated. He waved to Sakura, motioning for her to join them. Naruto was the first to break the silence. Hey! Irika, what gives? Why didn't we get a team? Irika shrugged. I don't know. All I know is that the scroll specifically said that you three were to wait here until your new sensei arrived. Sasuke finally cut into the conversation. So who is our new sensei? Irika sighed. Honestly, I have no idea. It was only listed as classified. With that, Irika began walking out of the room, leaving three very confused students still standing in the classroom. The three of them sat in silence for several minutes before Sakura turned to Sasuke. What does it mean that our sensei is classified? Sasuke made to answer, before a voice right behind them answered. It means that according to Konoha's records, I don't exist. And from this moment on, neither do you. All three of the young students spun around, to find a white-haired old man sitting behind them quietly on the desk. He wore standard black shinobi attire, but his arms had the old hard leather guards of ANBU. His shoulders were covered in rounded metal plates that had been nicked and dented over decades of use. Next to him was what looked like an old metal samurai helmet. Sasuke was the first to recover from the shock of being surprised. Who are you? The man smiled. I'm your sensei. Naruto jumped up and pointed his finger at the man. What the hell? You're just an old man. Sasuke seemed like he was about to voice a similar concern when Sakura suddenly grabbed Naruto and pulled him back down into the chair. I recognize you, weren't you the Sandaime Hokage? Kakashi stood next to Tsunade, both of them staring out over Konoha. So you went through with it and made Sarutobi-sama the sensei for the team. Tsunade nodded her head. It was really the most logical choice. Whether that old coot wants to admit it or not, he's really not fit to be on the front lines anymore. Since he obviously doesn't want to retire, this is the best option. Plus, look at what he did with me and my teammates. Kakashi nodded his head. I guess I can't disagree with you. Tsunade looked over towards him. You still wish that I had allowed you to be their sensei? Kakashi nodded his head. Tsunade shrugged her shoulders. I am sure that there will come a day when they will need your help, Kakashi. Kakashi, trying once more, pushed his luck. Still, the Sandaime is old, wouldn't it have been better to place them with a younger sensei? Tsunade looked back out towards the village. You should have known by now. There comes a point in every shinobi's life when they realize that they are past their prime. It's at this time one of two things happen. Either they quit and become a civilian, or they train harder in spite of their age. They fight time and do their best to stay in peak performance. Those are the deadliest ninja that you will ever find on the field. The old ones, who in spite of aging kept training, and with their decades of experience, crush all their opponents. She turned and sat down at her desk to begin filling out some more paperwork. I'm sorry, Kakashi, but you cannot be their sensei. Kakashi nodded and made his way towards the door when Tsunade called out to him. There is, however, another team that will be graduating in the next year or two that may interest you. Naruto stared wide-eyed at the old man across from him. If Sakura was right, and this was the Sandaime Hokage, then they had been lied to in their history books. According to the books, the Sandaime had been injured in the Kyuubi attack and was currently living at his estate in the Sarutobi compound. The old man jumped off the table and landed on his feet in front of the students. Before anyone asks, I assure you that I am quite uninjured. Sakura, her curiosity overriding any thought of nervousness, began asking questions. But if you're an active ninja, then we would have heard about you. I mean, if a Hokage is out doing missions, then obviously people are going to notice something. The old man laughed. Which is true. Then, reaching around behind himself, he pulled out a mask with the likeness of Monkey on it and secured it to his face. Unless I was in an organization that, according to Konoha records, has no members. You can call me Saru asterisk, or perhaps Saru Sensei. With that, he dropped 3 identical black cloth sacks in front of the 3 students. Tied to each sack was an identical blank white mask with circular holes for eyes. Welcome to ANBU, kids. With that, he disappeared a puff of white smoke, leaving 3 stunned children sitting by themselves. Naruto was the first to move. He quietly picked up the white porcelain mask. A small note was taped to the inside of it. If you should choose to accept this position, meet on top of the Hokage monument at sunrise tomorrow. Come dressed in the uniform provided. And remember, from the moment that you accept this mask, you do not exist. You will become ANBU, those who are damned by the flesh, saved by the blood. Looking around, he saw that both Sasuke and Sakura reading an identical note. After a moment, all 3 of them slowly brought the white masks up to their faces and felt the seals on the rims anchor it securely in place. Sakura released a tense breath. I'll see you tomorrow morning, then she grimaced, hearing how her voice echoed off the mask. It perverted it, making it sound hollow and dead. Naruto sat alone in his small apartment, quietly laying out each item that was found inside the black sack that Saru had given him. It contained black shinobi sandals, 2 sets of black pants shirts, a gray chest covering that seemed to have some sort of steel mesh inside of it, stiff gray leather arm and shin guards, and a black heavy cloth cloak to cover the whole ensemble. It also seemed to have a small ninjato that fit the back of the chest armor, but he had discarded that in favor of his longer katana. Slowly he began putting on the ensemble. It was heavier than what he normally wore, but it was also much stronger, less likely to get cut or torn in the heat of battle. The belt that was on the pants had a small hook that he could attach his mask to when he didn't have to wear it. After tightening all the armor down till it was comfortable, he placed the mask back on his face and looked in the mirror. Outside of his bright blonde hair, it would have been impossible to identify who he was, but if he put on the cloak, even that was hidden. Taking the mask back off, he sat down on the floor and leaned up against the wall. Taking a scroll off the wall, he began reading. The primary postulate of Futon. Morning came quickly for the 3 young students. Just as the far eastern horizon was beginning to brighten, all 3 were standing above Konoha, peering out over the vast darkness that was just beginning to leave the land. Behind them they heard someone walking out of the small forest. Unsurprisingly, it was Saru. He motioned for them to come over to him. Good, you're all on time. Today is your first exam. If you fail, you will be sent back to the academy with your memory modified so that you do not remember ever having passed the exam. Do you understand? Three masked faces nodded in understanding. You have 1 hour to complete the first part of this exam. He held up a single bell. This bell must be captured. Failure to do so will result in being returned to the academy. You may use any skills that you possess. If you do not come at me with the intent to kill, you will not pass this exam. Your time begins now. All 3 of the students jumped away, putting some space between them and the seasoned Hokage. Almost immediately Naruto began forming hand seals for some jutsu, while Sasuke drew his ninjato and began running in. Sarutobi smiled. Good, they are already working as a team, but he frowned for a second, looking over towards the pink-haired ANBU trainee who was just standing there, with her hands in the ram seal. As he moved to intercept the Uchiha, who by now was only feet away from him, a small bird broke out into song as the sun rose. The effects were immediate. He could feel a moderately powerful genjutsu fall into place over him. It would be nothing astonishing if it was coming from a Chunin or Jounin, but for a newly graduated genin, it was terrifying. Sasuke was now no more than a blur, and his balance was completely thrown off. However, with quickness that only years of experience can provide, he broke the genjutsu and blocked Sasuke's ninjato. Kicking hard in the chest, he sent him flying towards his blonde teammate. Surprisingly enough, the blonde that Sasuke smashed into disappeared into a puff of smoke and he heard a yell. Futon, Kamaitachi no Jutsu! From behind him. Spinning around, he could just make out an invisible blade of wind flying at him from Naruto's sword. As he jumped into the air to avoid it, he heard the breeze blow through the trees. Immediately the world spun upside down. Landing in a roll, on the sky or earth, whatever it really was. He cancelled the technique. Looking around, he could see Sakura standing at the edge of the field, high up in a tree. Her hands still locked in the ram seal. Sara's eyes widened. That's how she's doing it, he thought. She's picking up sound waves that are already heading my way and infusing a genjutsu into them. That's why there isn't any obvious trigger. She uses completely normal sounds to embed the technique. Using sound to trigger a genjutsu was not unheard of. In fact, his former student, Orochimaru, had favored the idea, but it was always a sound that could be controlled, such as a whistle, bells, or some kind of musical instrument. The idea of using nature sounds was incredible. He could see both Sasuke and Naruto land near Sakura. All 3 stared down at him. When he saw Naruto begin making more hand seals, and Sasuke running down the tree towards him, he quickly threw a pair of shuriken at Naruto. The metal stars forced him to dodge, not completing the technique. In a matter of seconds he completed his own jutsu and called out. Ninpo, Kanashibari no Jutsu. Sasuke faltered in mid-step as the heavy killing intent washed over him. Sarutobi calmly walked up and gave him a hard chop to the neck, rendering him unconscious. Looking back up at the tree, he could see that Sakura and Naruto were still standing there, unsure of what to do now that Sasuke was unconscious. Sarutobi reached into his weapons pouch and threw a single kunai with an explosive note at the pair of ANBU trainees. As the large explosion decimated the tree, he saw the pair jump in opposite directions. Without missing a beat, he took off after Sakura, quickly catching up to the already winded genjutsu user. Without so much as breaking a sweat, he dodged her pitiful taijutsu attempts and hit her hard in the stomach. She too fell to the ground unconscious. Turning around, he saw Naruto standing not too far away, frantically trying to make some hand seals. Unfortunately, the old man quickly beat him to it. Kokoangia no Jutsu, Bringer of Darkness. Suddenly Naruto's world went completely dark. He couldn't hear or see anything. Within seconds he felt a sharp blow to the neck and the dark ground rushing up to meet him. Some time later Naruto groaned and tried to stand up, only to find himself tied to a tree. Shaking his head, he found that his mask was still in place. He tried to move his hands, but they were tied tightly with the fingers bound by a wire to keep him from making hand seals. Looking from side to side, he could see that both of his teammates were similarly bound together. Well, now that we're all awake, I can finally finish this exam. Naruto and his teammates looked up to see Sarutobi sitting a rock calmly taking a puff off an old wooden pipe. By all rights, I should fail all 3 of you. Naruto was about to yell back, but Sarutobi just continued on. The academy was right. By all means, you are each a genius. Sakura, I have only ever once seen someone use all the natural sounds around them to create a genjutsu. However, the moment that I covered all sounds with a large explosion, you were rendered useless. I picked apart your taijutsu with pathetic ease. He turned his head towards Sasuke. And Uchiha Sasuke. The Avenger, you are so unlike your brother. Naruto could feel Sasuke bristle with anger beside him. You were excellent with your taijutsu, far faster than either of your teammates. But the moment I kept you from moving with a single ninjutsu that is taught to all A and BU, you froze. I didn't even have to fight you, just a simple chop to the neck. He then turned his steady gaze towards Naruto. And Naruto, the ninjutsu genius, he said with obvious sarcasm. You're good with ninjutsu, but you stand in one spot, relying on teammates to create openings for you. Once Sasuke and Sakura was down, one good genjutsu, and you might have been dead. Standing up, he threw a kunai and cut the rope bindings. All of you follow me. He led them back over to the edge of the Hokage monument. The sun was now fully over the horizon and basking the entire city in its warm glow. The civilians were just beginning to leave their homes on their way to work. I will not lie to you three like the council wishes. All three ninja turned their attention back towards the old man. You three have been chosen to be trained as the newest free response team. You will undergo several years of intensive training with myself and various other instructors. Sakura interrupted. Wait, a free response team? Sara nodded his head. When I was first training my original Genin team, I came up with the concept. The team would be made up of 3 exceptional shinobi, who would be trained to undertake the missions that no one else could. To go into impossible missions, and not only succeed, but to come back from them. Pointing down to the likeness of Tsunade. It was a resounding success, and it arguably won us the Second Great Shinobi War. They were named the Densetsu no Sannin, 3 legendary shinobi, after they fought Hanzo outside Amagekyo to a standstill. Something that no other team had ever accomplished. After that, we tried to make several others, but before they could finish their training, one of them died and the team fell apart. The only sole exception to this rule is the original Ino Shikacho team. But they were formed during a time of peace and were allowed to grow before being fed to the wolves. Sarutobi remained silent for a minute, allowing Naruto time to voice his question. So why are they making a new one? Sarutobi frowned. The Sannin, it seems, were not as perfect as I had hoped for. One of my students, Orochimaru, fled the village, and is apparently now trying to raise an army to destroy it. Silence reigned again at that rather morbid thought. Finally Sasuke began asking a question. Neither of those other teams were ever a part of ANBU, so why are we? Sarutobi actually smiled at that question. Very astute, Sasuke. Ironically, you were put into the organization with the highest mortality rate, to protect you. Seeing their questioning looks, he continued. You see, when word gets out about a new free response team being trained, some country would always attempt an assassination or would target the team on missions. By placing you into ANBU, all of your movements, living quarters, training schedules, everything about you is classified. That way it greatly reduces any attempts on your life. All 3 of the new genin shuddered at the thought of so many people being out to get them. The 3 of you failed my exam horribly. However, it appears that Tsunade's changes in the academy were not all in vain. You worked together in a battle that you knew that you stood no chance of winning. Sarutobi turned and began walking back towards the forest. I have made up my mind. I will train you for 6 months at the most. During that time you will obey every command that I give, or I will wipe your memory and send you away. If you wish to continue, go to your homes, gather whatever belongings you can fit into the bag that your uniforms came in, and meet me here by noon. If you do not return, I will assume that you do not wish to continue, and will act accordingly. With that he once again left. All 3 genin began making their way down the mountainside towards their respective homes. So, what do you think of them? Asked Sarutobi. Tsunade jumped out of the tree and landed beside him. They definitely show promise, but they are all overly specified. The academy has improved, but it still has a lot of work to be done, it seems. Sarutobi nodded. In their individual fields they are all well into upper chunin skills, but they are so weak in the others that they are barely genin. Tsunade nodded her head. So what do you have in mind? Sarutobi chuckled. You're going to love this. He handed her a scroll that he had written down his new training schedule. Tsunade busted out laughing when she read the first 2 steps. I don't know if that's cruel, or downright ingenious, but I can guarantee that they will hate you for it. Sarutobi nodded. So I have a couple of preteen kids mad at me. At least I can rest knowing that they will have the best teamwork in the village. Tsunade laughed. That or they kill one another. Sarutobi laughed. Maybe, but I don't think so. They are all rather lonely children. I think this is a chance that they have all been secretly wishing for. Tsunade shook her head and just started walking away. Whatever, just don't kill them. Sarutobi just chuckled and walked back into the woods. Just get back to the paperwork, you old hag. Tsunade spun on her heel. Who are you to call me old? But he was already gone. Damned old fool, she mumbled to herself. Sakura stood in her room, staring at the small desk that sat in the corner. When she was younger, it had been covered with all her pictures of Sasuke and different types of makeup. But she had grown out of that. 2 years ago, her brother Sora went out on a simple C-rank mission that went awry. After that, she had moved in with her grandmother. A small tear ran down her cheek as she thought about her brother. Both her parents had been killed when the Kyuubi attacked, and ever since then it had been just her and her brother. When he died, her whole world that she had carefully built up came crashing down around her. That's when her grandmother took her under her wing and began teaching her sound-based genjutsu. She had dived into it with a passion. Looking down at the table, she picked up a small blue music box. She lifted its lid and let the soft music break the silence. She stood there listening to the box for a couple of minutes. Inside the lid were 2 pictures. The first showed a pink-haired man with his arms around a young blonde woman. A young boy just into his early teens stood next to them with a new shiny Hittite. The mother was holding a tiny baby in her arms. The picture next to it was more recent. It was just her and her brother. He was teaching her how to throw saban needles with a large smile on his face. You're leaving, aren't you? She shut the box and turned around. Boss, and she was surprised to see her standing there. She had been so caught up in her memories that she hadn't heard her approach. You have an ANBU mask on your belt, so I assume that you can't tell me about it. Sakura nodded her head. Her grandmother walked over to her, supporting her thin frame on a wooden cane. She stopped right in front of Sakura and dropped the cane and grabbed the young girl in a tight hug. Please come back. Her voice was full of emotion. She never said anything else, and she quickly let go and left the room. She knew that by Konoha law, her granddaughter was no more. Sakura stood there, tears starting to run down her cheeks. She put the music box in her bag, along with several other belongings. A couple of her favorite books, some genjutsu scrolls, and a pillow that her brother had given her for her 8th birthday. She was about to pull the bag shut when she looked back at her desk. Hesitating for a moment, she picked up her music box, wrapped it in a spare shirt, and placed it inside of her bag. Pulling the string tight, she put the bag on her back and the mask back on her face and jumped out the window onto the roof. Sasuke stood in his Spartan room at the quiet Uchiha compound, his mother's ninjato resting in his hands. Tears almost started forming at his eyes. It was almost 4 years ago since Itachi had killed them all. Only 4 short years, but he couldn't remember her voice. He didn't remember what his own mother's voice sounded like. Shaking his head from such thoughts, he put the ninjato into his back and began packing supplies into his bag. He couldn't think about the past now. He finally had a chance to get stronger, to finally be able to kill his brother. He grabbed several different taijutsu scrolls off the shelf in his room. He had scoured the Uchiha library for almost anything that he could find that would help him. When he was younger, he was originally enamored by the idea of being a ninjutsu specialist like his brother, and so many others in the clan. But when they were all killed, he lost his interest. Itachi killed all of them. All the genjutsu and ninjutsu experts, but not a single one was an expert in taijutsu. They were lazy, and the Sharingan made it easy to excel in the others. So he had thrown his entire life into taijutsu, hoping that it would give him an edge over his brother. Only time would tell. Shouldering his bag, he calmly walked out of the house, locking it behind him, and made his way back to the monument. Naruto stood in his small single-room apartment. His bag was almost full of spare clothing, ninjutsu scrolls and the like. The last scroll he owned was sitting in his hands. It was a small dark blue scroll that had a large nodachi sealed inside of it. The Hokage had given it to him on his 6th birthday, saying that it was his mother's. She wouldn't tell him anything about his parents outside of that his father was a ninjutsu expert, and his mother used a nodachi. The Hokage had always made an effort to see him from time to time when he was younger, but he had fallen by the wayside in more recent years. They were never particularly close to being with anyways. The sword wasn't much, but it was all he had. It's what prompted him to follow those two paths. He had thrown himself into ninjutsu with an almost fanatical passion. The Nodachi was the only thing that his parents had ever left him. All in all, it was a rather simple blade. The only unique pieces about it are that the blade itself had a slight blue tinge to it, and the guard and sheath had a matching swirl, although the sheath's swirl looked to be made out of sapphire. It was a beautiful blade, but until he was at least 5 feet tall, he had no hopes of using it. Sighing, he placed the sealed sword into his pants pocket. As he left his apartment, he tossed his keys and last rent check into the landlord's mailbox. Not like I'm going to be needing it anytime soon, he thought. The sun was just reaching its peak when the team met up back at the top of the Hokage monument. They all arrived within a few minutes of each other. Good, you're all here. Sarutobi walked back in from along the same trail he had left on earlier. He motioned for the 3 of them to follow him. The path was generally unremarkable. The only reason it was of any interest is because it was such a well-worn path considering how far out from the village they were. Finally, after walking for near 10 minutes, they entered a small clearing with a tiny shack at the center. Sarutobi turned to face them. It is extremely important that you do not step off the beaten trail when you go into that cabin. It is one of the 5 hidden entrances into the ANBU headquarters. If you step off of it, a series of security seals will be immediately alerted. All 3 of the students nodded their heads. Seeing their confirmation, Sarutobi led them into the cabin. Once they reached the door and opened it, it became obvious that here was no cabin. Instead, there was what appeared to be a large steel elevator with a series of buttons. Sara pushed them in and pressed a button, seemingly at random. The doors shut and they began moving downwards. Contrary to popular belief, the rooms inside the Hokage monument are not just for emergencies. They also house the ANBU headquarters. We are going to the floor that will work as your home for the upcoming months. When the elevator came to a stop, Sarutobi led them out and into a long hallway. It was painted off-white and had harsh fluorescent lighting. Other than the slight hum of the lights, though, the hallway was dead silent. Sarutobi led them down the hallway, until they came to a door labeled Team Saru? Naruto asked in confusion as he read the placard. Normally the team is named after their team leader. Since you are all just candidates, you are named after the 6 months are done. The Hokage will assign you each a code name. Until then we will be training in secrecy, so there is no point in code names. The 3 nodded their heads. Good. With that, he pushed open the metal-plated door. It opened to what looked like one big common room. It had a wooden couch, with blue upholstery and 2 small chairs that were similarly designed. To the left was a small kitchen, complete with stove, fridge, dishwasher, and what appeared to be stocked cupboards. The team walked inside and began inspecting what appeared to be a completely normal apartment. To the right of the common room was a hallway with 2 doors. One door opened up to a large bedroom. It had 3 futons on the floor along with a large trunk to store personal effects. Across from each futon was a black wood desk. At the foot of each bed was another stack of ANBU uniforms. All in all, the room was rather Spartan, but that was to be expected. Sensei? Sakura asked. You're concerned about the room arrangements, I imagine? He replied, already guessing what the problem was. Sakura nodded her head. Most of our younger female candidates voice similar complaints. However, your 2 partners will become closer to you than family. You will share everything and there are no secrets between ANBU members. There is only 1 bedroom in each apartment in this complex. Similarly, the bathroom across the hall is made for several people. There are separate shower stalls and toilet stalls, but there is only 1 onsen that is made for several people. Not that I'm saying to prance about in the nude, mind you. All 3 of the candidates blushed furiously behind their masks. It will take you a while to get used to the accommodations, but it will make you a stronger team in the long run. He pointed to the various beds. The first bed is Sasuke's, then Sakura's, and the furthest is Naruto's. Take a few minutes and begin setting out your gear and getting settled it. Get a good night's sleep tonight. We will begin tomorrow morning promptly at 5 a.m. With a short, "Hi sensei," the team answered, and Sarutobi motioned for them to follow him over to the main room. I need you to all kneel. Seeing the confusion that all 3 of the students wore, he decided to expand on what he meant. Before I can begin the training, you all must be marked as ANBU. He turned and showed the team his right arm, just below the right bicep. This is the mark of ANBU. Each operative has one. It is a sign to all those around you that you are not someone to be trifled with. It is also what will allow you access to all of our facilities once you become a full member. All 3 students nodded and knelt down on the floor. Sarutobi made a quick hand seal. Kegabunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone, 2 clones sprung forth. Each one went to one of the 3 shinobi and began making seals. Be without fear in the face of your enemies. Be brave and upright that Kami may love thee. Speak the truth always, even if it leads to your death. Safeguard the helpless and do no wrong. That is your oath. Finishing the last seal, he slammed his open palm onto the exposed bicep of his student's arm. Searing pain filled the flesh as the ANBU symbol was etched into their arms. And that is so you remember it. He took a deep breath and dispelled his clones. Rise ANBU, your story is only just beginning. The mark that adorns your arm is the constant reminder that all of us are damned by the flesh, but saved by the blood. He began to walk out of the room and towards the main door. Once I leave this room, you will be locked inside until I let you back out. With that, he walked through the door and closed it. Once closed, the cracks around the door all glowed brightly for a second, before the door settled firmly in place. Once it was locked, they began walking back to the bedroom. The clock on the wall showed that it was only a little past 2. When Naruto got into the bedroom, Sakura was already putting her clothes away in the trunk. All 3 of them had removed their masks and set them down on their respective desks. At the back of the desk, Naruto spotted a large rest that was meant to hold an ANBU's sword. With a smile, he opened his pocket and removed the scroll that contained his mother's nodachi. With a swipe of blood across the seal and a small poof, the long sword appeared in his hands. Running his hand fondly across the sheath, he stared at Blue Swirl. The sudden appearance of the sword had not gone unnoticed by his roommates and partners. Hey Naruto, what's with the sword? Asked Sakura. Naruto turned to see his roommates looking at him. It was my mother's, at least that's what the Hokage told me. Once I'm strong enough, I intend to use it. Surprisingly, it was Sasuke who broke the silence. My mother was also a kenjutsu specialist. Naruto stared at Sasuke like he had grown a second head. Sasuke, that is the single largest piece of information that you have ever shared about yourself. Sasuke shrugged. I never had a reason to before. I was always training to kill him, but now I'm finally one step closer to surpassing him. Sakura, who was placing her small blue music box on the table, looked over at him. You mean your brother, don't you? Sasuke's eyes grew dark. That man is no brother of mine. Sensing that Sasuke did not want to push the subject any further, Naruto tried for a change in subject. What do you think that sensei meant when he said that ANBU are damned by the flesh, saved by the blood? Sasuke shrugged, but Sakura answered. I assume the damned by the flesh part is about the ANBU being damned because of what just being one entails, but I don't know about the blood. Sarutobi made his way down the long hallways and maze of corridors that was ANBU headquarters. After finally reaching the room he was looking for, he knocked before just walking in. The room was filled with blank masks. A single old man sat at the desk at the far side, slowly and painstakingly drawing symbols onto the masks. Did you finish the 3 masks that I asked for? The old man didn't say anything, but he pointed at a table behind him that had a series of 3 masks. They were almost completely white still, save for a few small seals that were a little different on each mask. Thanks, he replied and walked out of the room and towards the entrance to the Hokage Tower. After several minutes of walking, he was outside his old office door. With a quick knock he strode in. So Tsunadeheim, what have you decided on? Tsunade chuckled. You're going to love this team. Early the next morning, a blaring alarm went off inside the team's room. All 3 of the young ANBUs sluggishly got out of bed and began dressing quickly. Sakura went into the bathroom to change to give herself a little privacy. Apparently Naruto had no such qualms, that or he was too tired to notice the girl in the room. Within a half hour, all 3 of them were showered and eating a simple breakfast of milk and cereal. Except for Naruto, who was on cup 4 of instant ramen. That is disgusting, commented a slack-jawed Sasuke as his teammate ravenously shoveled another cup of ramen down his throat. I agree, commented his pink-haired teammate. The 3 finished the meal in silence. None of them were really morning people, so it was just better for everyone if no one talked. A few minutes before 5, they walked back into their room and donned their masks, along with the rest of the gear that they hadn't put on. Sure enough, promptly at 5 a.m. the door into the apartment made a hissing noise and opened to reveal Saru standing there holding a small bag in one hand. Good, you're all here and ready to go. The 3 young shinobi were standing next to each other, each one looking like the picture-perfect ANBU, just a little shorter. Take off your masks. Each of them slowly took the mask off of their faces. Saru walked over and collected them, and then handed them each a new mask. They were almost identical to their originals except they had a couple of seals that were written on the outside. Each of them took the mask that Saru handed them and placed it on their face. Once they all had them attached, he made a one-handed ram seal. Fuin seal. The masks felt like they suctioned around their faces. Naruto, taken by surprise, tried to yell out, but no sound came out. No matter how hard he yelled, he couldn't even hear himself. Looking around, he saw Sasuke clutching desperately at the eyes of his mask, trying to pull it off or something. Similarly, Sakura was grabbing her mask near where her ears were located. Finally, Sasuke yelled out, "What the hell did you do? I can't see anything." Saru chuckled. Each of you are deadly in your chosen field, but you have become over-reliant on one particular sense. Noticing that Sakura was growing more and more frantic, he pulled out a scroll, opened it, and handed it to her. Until you learn the ANBU hand signals and how to read lips, you can follow along using this scroll, Sakura. It will immediately transcribe anything that I say onto it. Sakura, reading what he had just said, nodded her head in understanding. Good, now as I was saying as he turned to address the group as a whole again, the seals on your masks will completely block your most used sense unless you are in a life or death situation. For Naruto, that means that you cannot talk, and thusly are unable to use any of those ninjutsu that you have become over-reliant on. Sasuke, you depend solely on your sight in taijutsu, so I have sealed away your vision. And Sakura, for you to use your genjutsu, you have to be able to hear the sounds that you so adeptly manipulate. So I have sealed your hearing. All three preteens just stood there shocked. The skills that they had worked so hard to earn had just been taken away by an old man and a porcelain mask. So with that, let's get to the training grounds. Tsunade and Kakashi stood on a balcony at the side of the shinobi training grounds. The basic grounds were all enclosed in the mountain's caves. As long as you didn't use any big jutsu, you were safe. Plus, it kept you away from the prying eyes of the other ninja. So what do you think of them? Kakashi asked Tsunade as they watched the team below them stumble through a basic obstacle course that required teamwork to complete efficiently. Saru stood behind his team, barking out commands for different formations and drills as they went. Kakashi laughed. I've got to give it to him. I never would have thought to seal away their strengths and force them to work together like this. That man really is a genius. Kakashi cringed as he saw Naruto get nailed a log that dropped down on top of him. Seconds later, Sasuke tripped over the same log, and Sakura, who was in front, missed the whole thing because she couldn't see or hear them. Kakashi palmed his face. They may have been geniuses in the academy, but it's painfully obvious that they are way below the ANBU par. Do we have any idea of what their elemental alignments are? Tsunade looked over at him for a second before refocusing on the team below. They haven't been tested yet, but Sarutobi says that Sasuke seems to be aligned to lightning, Sakura to earth, and Naruto to both wind and fire. Kakashi stared back down at the genin. Wind and fire? That's unusual given that they don't usually go together. Is the fire from Kyuubi? Tsunade nodded. That's what we suspect. The wind he would get from both his parents, but no one in either of those families was ever known for having a fire alignment. Kakashi nodded his head. So does he know about Kyuubi? Tsunade shook her head. Below, the team had finally worked together to get through the course. By running in a triangle, they were able to utilize each other's senses. Naruto took the lead and would make simple hand signals to Sakura, who would translate to Sasuke. It was crude, but effective. It doesn't appear so. She finally replied. So when are you going to tell him? He asked. When they complete their training in 6 months. Time passed quickly for the team of ANBU. Each morning Saru would meet them at 5 and begin their training. After the first several weeks, their changes became more and more apparent. Naruto was becoming devastating with his sword. He was naturally slower than Sasuke, but he found that by infusing his muscles with all the chakra that he could no longer use for ninjutsu, he was able to easily keep pace. His speed along with the reach of his long no-dachi that he had begun using was an extremely deadly mix. Sasuke no longer relied on his sight to keep track of his enemies. He was now extremely adept at tracking things by sounds alone. Both he and Naruto had trained extensively with Saru to learn Shuriken, Monkey Fist. It incorporated a large amount of aerobatics that suited both Naruto's sword techniques and Sasuke's taijutsu and kenjutsu. He had begun learning some ninjutsu, but it was obvious that he would never reach the levels that Naruto was aiming for. Sakura was probably the most surprising of the three. She took her loss of hearing hard, but in the end it only strengthened her resolve. She knew that she would never be the ninjutsu and taijutsu monsters that were her teammates, but she had thrown herself into the study of medic techniques. She was deadly accurate with her saban needles. With the help of Sara, she had begun using her earth element to feel for the vibrations that people around her made on the ground. She was still unable to use her genjutsu, but this new Sakura was emerging to be just as deadly. Every few weeks, Tsunade would stop by the training facility with Kakashi to check up on the team. Today, though, was the end of their second month, and it was time for their first real mission as a team. She watched below them as team ran a more difficult gauntlet that culminated with a spar with their sensei. Even after months of training, they still couldn't land a single blow on the old man. Naruto ran forward, moving so quickly that he was just a black blur, a blur that was quickly stopped by a lightning-fast kick to the leg. As he rolled on the ground, he came up holding a bleeding hand. "Do not stop, Naruto!" yelled their sensei. "Blood is just red sweat." Naruto drew the blade off his back and began his assault anew, but this time he wasn't alone. Sasuke appeared behind his sensei and aimed a thrust straight at the man's back. Sarutobi was quick though, and slid to the side, avoiding the attack completely. He then threw a half-hearted kick at the boy's midsection, only for the blind child to dodge towards the side and a barrage of poison saban to rain down upon the area. Seeing that both Naruto and Sasuke had reformed for a pincer attack, and that Sakura was still ready to back them up with long-range weapons, Sara called for an end to the spar. "Very good, team. You are all getting better, however you are far from being what the world will expect from you. Now go and shower and come back here within a half hour. I believe the Hokage has a mission for us." All three heads perked up at the mention of a mission, but no one said a word. They had been told what to do already. They would have time to learn about the mission when the time came. All three of them filed out into the hallway and towards their room. "Do you think it's wise to send them on a mission so soon, Sarutobi-sensei?" questioned the blonde-haired Hokage. "They need a break from their training, something to get them out of this damn cave for at least a couple of days. They may try to act like true shinobi, but in reality they are still frightened children." The Hokage nodded her head, remembering her days when she and her team had first started training him. "I have a fairly simple mission for them. The four of you will be guarding a monk on his way to the cloisters in the mountains to the north. There isn't any trouble expected, but it's a fairly long travel and the terrain is tough." Sarutobi nodded his head. "That will work perfectly." Soon enough, all three of the trainees were situated back in the training facility, as the Hokage gave them the outline of their first mission. The monk's name is Iwakura Yukikatsu. He is a monk who is traveling to a new cloister in the mountains far north of Konoha. There isn't any real expectation of running into any ninja up there, but the possibility of bandits is always there. It shouldn't take any more than 2 weeks to complete the journey, so prepare accordingly. The three trainee A and B nodded their heads and quickly disappeared back to their rooms to pack for the trip. The Hokage looked up at Saru. "Yukikatsu will meet you at the top of the Hokage monument, and you may leave from there. Bring them back in one piece, Sarutobi." With that, she turned and marched out of the room, leaving the old man alone for a few seconds before his team returned to him. With a wave of his hand, he led them out of the facility and into the elevator. "When you step outside of this elevator, remember that you are ANBU, but you are also going to be the ones who need to create a name for yourselves. Do not purposefully draw attention to yourselves, but if you do find yourselves under scrutiny, make sure you leave in a positive light." By the time his speech was finished, the elevator was already at the surface of the mountain. A short walk down the road, they found the young-looking monk sitting quietly in a lotus position, meditating silently. "You shinobi are a most interesting group," he said suddenly. "You walk without making a sound. But you can always tell when the ANBU are near. When you guys come, the earth itself falls silent." Opening his eyes, he surveyed the four ninjas standing in front of him. "And now you are training children in your barbaric ways." The man stood up. "Well, let's be on our way. We have a lot of ground to cover before nightfall." Naruto had always imagined that monks were quiet old men who lived far out of the reach of society. They were supposed to be kind and wise. This man, however, was none of those things. It had become painfully apparent that he held no love for shinobi and their barbaric ways of life. He spent most of the day degrading them as they went, informing them about how the gods would never forgive them for their crimes. Finally, after nightfall, the man finally stopped talking when he fell asleep. Soon after, both Sasuke and Sakura had followed him to sleep, and only Naruto and Saru remained stationed around the fire. You seem oddly quiet tonight, Naruto. What's on your mind? Saru asked. Naruto may not be able to talk, but he was still the most expressive of anyone on the team. His body language alone always spoke volumes. It turned out to be an excellent weapon for him in fights. His silence and goofy act only enraged his opponents. So he may be unable to talk, but he was most definitely not mute. Taking out a small scroll, Naruto scribbled something down on it and handed it to his sensei. It simply read, religion. Sarutobi nodded his head. Of course this particular mission would raise some questions for you. What is it that you are wondering about it? Naruto took back his scroll and wrote down another question. What do you believe? Sarutobi sighed. I put no stock in religion. By the word religion I have seen the lunacy of fanatics of every denomination be called the will of God. I have seen too much religion in the eyes of too many murderers. Holiness is in right action, and courage on behalf of those who cannot defend themselves, and goodness. What God desires is here. He tapped Naruto lightly on his head. And here, as he repeated the action over the blonde's heart. And what you decide to do every day, you will be a good man or not. Naruto nodded his head and lay down. It had been a long day, and he had a gut feeling that tomorrow wouldn't be a whole lot easier. Despite what he had anticipated, the day passed without anything of interest occurring. The days came and went in sort of an uneasy silence. He remembered what Sara-sensei had told them. Silence is golden to an ANBU. When we are in he field, we do not talk unless absolutely necessary. You will find that silence is the most exquisite revenge for insults. Nothing pisses them off more. Admittedly, it didn't matter to Naruto whether Sensei wanted them to talk or not, since the seal on his mask prevented him from talking at all. But the monk seemed rather unnerved by his silence. Hey Saru, what's with these kids that you have? They don't seem quite right in the head. Especially that blonde one. The other two at least talk from time to time, but I haven't heard that one say a single word the entire journey. The older masked man chuckled. I assure that all three of my students are perfectly sane. He left the message at that though. His mind was focused on a narrowing in the path just ahead. There were people hiding in the bushes and trees. Most likely a group of thieves waiting for us to pass, he thought to himself. Looking ahead just in front of him, he could see that his team had also noticed the presence just ahead and had begun to prepare accordingly. As they got closer, he could see Sasuke begin making a few discreet hand seals. Sure enough, when they were in the narrowed area, a large man wielding an axe walked out in front of them and motioned for them to stop. This road here belongs to me and my gang. The thug motioned to several other men who began coming out of the foliage. Two of the larger ones came to stand next to him, trying to look as intimidating as possible. Just hand over all your money, and we may let you all live. Saru was about to answer the man when the brash monk yelled. Who are you to try to steal from a monk, a man of God? Surely you will burn in hell for these actions. The man smiled, revealing sickeningly yellow teeth. Hell? We already live in a world of hell. He motioned for his men to attack when Sasuke yelled out. Gakakyu no Jutsu. A huge red and yellow fireball roared down the open path, quickly incinerating the three largest men in front of them. Two others made to jump from the trees on either side, but Naruto's steel quickly dispatched them. Even Sakura got into the action when one of the men that was behind them tried to jump them. She spun around and embedded several samban deep into the man's skull. When 6 of their best fighters fell to 3 children in a matter of seconds, the other thieves took off running into the woods. The monk dropped to his knees. What senseless violence! Why would you do that to them? He was half questioning, half yelling at the 3 children in front of him. They were thieves, yes. But even they do not deserve to be chopped down like a weed that has grown in our path. What would make you do something as hideous as that? He pointed at the 3 still burning bodies in front of the group. Sasuke was surprisingly the one who answered. Sometimes it is entirely appropriate to crush the fly with a sledgehammer. The monk's face grew red and he made to slap the ignorant child when Sara grabbed his wrist. Turning to face the older man, the monk spat out. You should have let me just beat his ass. Sara shook his head and motioned to Naruto and Sakura. Naruto had already taken his sword back out and Sakura had palmed a few of the samban. Beat his ass? I just saved yours. The monk shrugged his wrist out the other man's vice-like grip. Whatever, we are only several miles away from the monastery. Let's hurry up so I can leave your barbaric group. With that he took off down the trail, carefully avoiding the corpses that lined the road. Sarutobi shook his head. Good job, team, was all he said before following the monk down the path. The other three stood there for a second staring at the 6 dead men. Wordlessly they piled them up and Sasuke set blaze to them before quietly saying, "Damned by the flesh." And Sakura finished, "Saved by the blood." Naruto finished by making some signs in the ANBU hand signals. "We will kill, so that others may live." They had been taught that motto from their first days as ANBU trainees. Sara and the other ANBU that would appear from time to time had drilled it into their heads. But it had never been more real than it was at that moment. Looking up, the three nodded at each other, before taking to the trees and sprinting ahead to catch up to their sensei. The rest of the trip was uneventful. The monk had finally silenced himself. Just before nightfall they reached the outer gates of the monastery. There the team left the monk and turned around to leave. "Thank you?" The team stopped, and saw the monk staring back at them. "I may not agree with your methods, but you got me here safely, so thank you." All 4 of the masked ninja merely nodded their heads before they disappeared into the trees like they had never been at all. It only took 2 days to return. They immediately went to the Hokage's office for Sara to give the report. "Good job, team." Sara's Tsunade filed the mission report into her outbox and looked back down at the team. "Go back to your training. Soon enough there will be more missions and exams for you, but for now, take a day of rest. Go out to the town, get something to eat, just remember that you leave your masks back at the training facility. You will have just 12 hours free of them. After that, you will resume being ANBU." The 3 young ANBU nodded and left the office, making their way back to the ANBU headquarters. "They are progressing nicely," Tsunade-chan said Sarutobi as he removed his mask and sat down in one of the comfortable chairs. "But I think that giving them that short break for the next day may be a wise move. They may be excellent shinobi in the making, but they are still children." Tsunade nodded her head in agreement. "They take the ANBU seriously enough that it is no harm in letting them out for a short time. Besides, I would like a full report of their progress from you." Sarutobi nodded. "Their teamwork is becoming flawless. When they are on a mission or in training, they hardly ever talk. They rarely even use the hand signs that so many of the ANBU have become overly reliant on. Instead, they have learned to read each other's body language. However, outside of the missions and training, they still joke around and act like any normal child their age. I would say that they are possibly the most sane ninja in ANBU." The 3 teammates were walking down the city street quietly. It was just noon when they were released. The moment they were in the room and Naruto had been able to remove his mask, the young blonde had insisted that they 3 of them go to Ichiraku Ramen for lunch. After a small dispute, they had finally given in to his demands. So after a quick shower the 3 of them were walking down the crowded roads of Konoha, towards the small ramen stand. "It's weird, you know," Naruto said quietly. Sasuke nodded his head. He stoic Uchiha had to admit that after 2 months of seeing almost no one but each other and their sensei, being thrown back into society for a short time was extremely awkward. "Hey guys," Sakura said, "after we're done at lunch, do you think we could go see my grandmother for a short time at least?" Sasuke and Naruto, having no family of their own, both held any family in high regard. They immediately agreed to Sakura's request. Seeing the ramen stand just down the road, Naruto let out a whoop of joy and sprinted down the road, gracefully vaulting over anyone who got in his way. At one point he even used a small fruit stand to flip over a busy intersection. Sasuke and Sakura laughed at his antics as they followed at a more sedate pace behind them. Sakura turned to look at her dark-haired teammate. "You just laughed." Sasuke looked confused for a moment before Sakura restated what she had said. "You just laughed. I haven't heard you do that in years." Sasuke understood what she was implying. What she really meant was, "I haven't heard you laugh since your brother killed your clan." Sasuke just shrugged. "Maybe it's just that I finally have found a reason to laugh again." With that he slipped beneath the small cloth-covered entrance to the ramen stand and sat down beside his blonde-haired teammate. Sakura shook her head and took the seat on the other side of Naruto, who was already scarfing down what appeared to be a second bowl of ramen. The team sat in an amiable silence while eating their food. Naruto made a little small talk with the chefs at the stand, while skillfully avoiding any questions as to where he had been for the last couple of months. In fact, the way he interacted with the pair, it was as if he had never left to begin with. "Hey Asen!" Naruto yelled out to the older ramen chef, "Give me another one of your miso ramen." The old man smiled and began preparing another dish. From behind them they heard someone yell, "Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, is that you in there?" The team turned around to see 6 other young genin making their way across the street towards them. Ino was the one who had spotted them and led the other ones over. "Where have you guys been? We haven't seen you in like months?" asked the rather annoying blonde-haired girl as she immediately flung herself at the stationary Sasuke. Acting on instinct, Sasuke moved quickly out of the way and Ino slammed face first into the wooden wall of the stand. Sakura giggled. "I guess some things haven't changed at all." Kiba walked up behind Naruto and slung an arm around the blonde's shoulders. "So really, what have you guys been up to? We haven't seen any of you since we graduated from the academy." Naruto shrugged and scratched the back of his head. "Well, you know, we've been training and doing missions and stuff." Kiba laughed. "Man, missions are such a bummer." Naruto looked confused. "I don't know, I never thought that they were that bad." Kiba looked astounded, but surprisingly it was Shikamaru who started talking. "I have to agree with Naruto. D-rank missions are boring, but it's less troublesome than the higher-ranked missions. At least we don't have to leave the village." Sakura sent Naruto a look, conveying to him that talking about missions was not a good idea. Sasuke picked up on it and changed the subject. "We haven't been doing too many missions really, most of the time has been doing some chakra control missions and teamwork stuff." Luckily no one seemed to notice the subtle shift from the topic. "Yeah, Asuma has been running us through all those stupid teamwork things all the time," said Ino. Shino suddenly broke into the conversation. "Contrary to what would appear to be the popular opinion here, I feel that it is in our best interest to cultivate better relations and understanding between teammates." Kiba and Ino stared at the quiet bug user. The only intelligent response that they could come up with was, "Huh." Sakura shook her head. "I'm sorry guys, but we only have a few hours before we need to meet back up with our sensei, so we need to get going." The team stood up and began making their way down the road, leaving the other 6 rookie genin staring at them as they made their way down the road. Ino was the first one to start up the conversation as they began walking down the road once more. Did anyone else think that they seemed a little different? Shikamaru just groaned. "Yeah, but it's way too troublesome to figure out why." Ino smacked him upside the head and was going to yell at him, but Hinata interrupted the dispute. "Ano, did anyone else notice that their Hitai were all covering their right arm?" Shino nodded. "Indeed, they did seem to be acting rather unusual." Ino huffed. "Well, whatever it is, Forehead had better tell me about it eventually." The team was making its way down the path when an ANBU appeared in front of them. "The 3 of you are to report to the Hokage's office immediately." The 3 nodded and disappeared following the ANBU across the rooftops. As they went, Sakura could see Naruto wordlessly asking, "Why does she want to see us now?" Sakura shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe something came up that she wanted to tell us." Sasuke moved and said, "Whatever it is, let's just get it over with already." The ANBU leading them was surprised by the wordless conversation that was going on between the 3 trainees that were following closely behind him. Normally that kind of teamwork was only seen between teammates that had been working together for years, not between a new team. As soon as they made it to the Hokage Tower, they all leapt up to the small balcony on the 3rd floor. From there it was just a brief walk down the hallway to the door. After knocking, the ANBU stuck his head inside the doorway. "Tsunade-sama, the team is here to see you." Tsunade nodded her head. "Good, send them in." The ANBU nodded and then sent the 3 in. "I'm sorry to have to cut your time off a little short, but an opportunity arose and I would like you 3 to take it." The team nodded in agreement, but Sakura asked, "What's the opportunity, Hokage-sama?" Tsunade nodded towards the ANBU guard, who walked out into the hallway. "The daimyo has stationed a small unit of samurai just to our north, along the border that we share with IWA. I want you 3 to go and learn from them for a short while. Both Naruto and Sasuke have expressed interest in learning how to use a sword, and despite what many shinobi will tell you, very few shinobi can match a true samurai's skill with a sword. The team nodded and an older man, wearing a simple kimono, walked in. Tucked into his obi were a katana and a shorter wakizashi. Tsunade stood up and greeted the man. "Welcome, General Hosokawa, thank you for coming." The older man bowed. "Thank you, Hokage-sama. It is a pleasure to finally meet with you in person. Are these the young trainees that you have talked about?" Tsunade nodded her head. "Yes, the two boys have both shown a great interest in studying the way of the sword. The girl is their other teammate." The man nodded. "I will take them for 2 months. The girl may study with our surgeons while they study the sword." He turned towards the 3 children. "Are you ready to learn?" The 3 eagerly nodded their heads. "Good, go and get your gear and meet me at the northern gate in 2 hours. From there we will leave. Your sensei has already informed me of the masks that you are to wear at all times, and I have agreed to follow his directions." The 3 nodded and left the room to fetch their gear. After they left, Hosokawa started talking again. "So they are going to be the ones who will deal the strongest blows during the upcoming war?" Tsunade shook her head. "We do not know for sure if war is even coming for sure." The general laughed. "Come now, Tsunade, even the daimyo knows that this war is imminent, and word has already begun to trickle throughout the countries that you are training a new team. It is only a matter of time before someone will strike the first blows." Tsunade made to argue, but the general cut her off. "Look, I will train them the best that I can in the next couple of months, but ultimately they will be the ones on the front lines, not us. The faster that you acknowledge that, the better off you will be." The general stood up and began walking towards the door. "I will keep them safe, Hokage-sama. Any ninja that dare to invade my camp will soon learn why the samurai were once the most feared force at the daimyo's discretion." The man left, and Tsunade muttered, "Arrogant fool." Sarutobi appeared leaning up against the wall behind her. "Perhaps he is, but he is right, you know. When their training is over, they will be the ones that are going to fight for us." Tsunade grabbed a bottle of sake from the compartment in her desk. Pouring herself a cup, she started talking. "Look, I know that, but I just don't agree with sending them out to a bunch of samurai. Just doesn't seem like the smartest idea that you've ever had." Sarutobi shrugged. "Either way, they are my students, and I will do what is best for them." Several miles away, the 3 teens and General Hosokawa were just walking into the well-organized samurai encampment. "We have already erected a tent for the 3 of you. It is situated in the 3rd row on the end. You may go and mingle with the men for the evening, but be aware that when day breaks, our training begins. You too." He pointed to Sasuke and Naruto. "Will report to the infantry division to begin learning our way of the sword. While you," he points to Sakura, "will be going to the surgeon's tents, where you will be learning more about human anatomy than you will probably ever have wished to have known." He looked at the group once more. "The Hokage said that you have today off, so I will honor her request. The seals on your masks will not reactivate until midnight tonight. I do require that you wear the mask, though. I cannot have your identities spread throughout the entire nation. Of the Hokage would have my head." The teens both bowed and thanked the general before making their way towards where their tent was located. On their way, they were watching the men who were making dinner or training in some fashion. About halfway to their tent, they could see a large group of young men yelling and jeering at some sort of contest. Hearing something moving in front of him, Naruto looked up to see a much larger teenage boy drop a large rock in front of him. Naruto pointed at the rock and said, "You seem to have dropped your rock." The larger teen, who probably wasn't more than 3 years older than him, grunted. "A test of manhood." Naruto, still wearing his blank mask, stared at him. "I'm okay, you win." He made to walk around the older boy, but the boy stuck a hand out and stopped him. "Call it a test of a soldier, then. The samurai will not allow us to wield swords until we turn 14, so we train with stones instead." Naruto just kept staring at the boy's face, but the boy kept talking anyways. "But then you shinobi come walking into our camp like you're hot shit. Just barely out of your mother's womb and already carrying a sword and walking around like you run the camp. So I challenge you." Naruto turned his head to the side at a goofy angle, obviously mocking the older boy. "So what is this challenge?" The boy picked up the large stone and hurled it an easy 30 or so feet. Naruto cocked his head to the other side. You have a strong throw. You could crush a man with such a throw. The boy puffed out his chest. I could crush you like the little bug that you are, Shinobi. Naruto turned to face the boy. Could you now? Naruto walked over and picked up the large stone and placed it back at the boy's feet, before moving to stand about 25 feet away from him. Well, let's see it then. The young samurai laughed. You'll move, we all know that shinobi have no honor to stand up in a straight fight. Naruto shook his head. I will not move from this point. In fact, if you strike me, I will give you my katana. He pulled the sword from the holster on his back and drove it into the ground at his feet. The young samurai grinned and picked up the boulder, smiling. Have it your way, shinobi. The whole time Sakura and Sasuke were standing stoically at the side of the crowd. A random face leaned over towards them and said, Aren't you worried about your friend? They shook their head. It would take far more than a single rock to kill him. Besides, I've never seen Naruto lose a bet, and I doubt that he intends to start now. With a yell, the older boy let the rock fly through the air. It landed with a thud just past Naruto on the right side. Naruto calmly bent down and picked up a single round pebble off the ground. It was no larger than a glass marble. Holding lightly between a couple of fingers, he flicked it hard at the older boy and struck him straight between the eyes. The older boy stumbled around, trying to regain his balance, before he finally fell down onto one knee. Naruto calmly walked over to the boy and offered him a hand up. You know, Naruto started, my sensei used to say that it isn't the size of your rock that matters, it's how you use it. The boy on the ground laughed, and accepted Naruto's hand and pulled himself to his feet. I think you and I are going to get along just fine, shinobi. My name's Hoshi. If you ever need anything, feel free to ask. Naruto nodded and began walking away. As he reached his teammates, Sakura smacked him upside the head. You couldn't just let them be, could you? You just had to mess with him. Naruto rubbed his head sheepishly. Ah, come on, Sakura-chan, he started it. Sasuke would have done the same thing, wouldn't you have, Sasuke? Sasuke turned and began walking towards the tent again. No comment. Sakura began walking away too, leaving Naruto standing there grumbling. Stupid teammates. The next morning, Naruto and Sasuke were standing in the training fields watching the more senior samurai begin going through complex katas with their swords. Sasuke tried to remember a kata that he had seen in one of his clan scrolls, but was failing miserably. Naruto seemed content to just practice random swipes and jabs against an invisible opponent. Finally, after a little while, two of the most senior samurai walked over to them. They appeared to be in their late 40s or early 50s. The one on the left beckoned for Naruto to follow him. Once they were about 100 yards away from Sasuke and the other samurai, he began speaking. I do not know your name, young one, nor do I care to learn it. I shall call you shinobi, and you shall merely call me sensei. Do you understand? Naruto nodded his head. Good, now Hosokawa-sama has informed me that you currently lack the ability to speak, which is good, because to samurai, when the master speaks, the pupil will listen. And make no mistake here, shinobi, I am the master. He drew his katana and assumed a readied stance across from Naruto. My master says that you have some skill with the blade, although you have never been formally trained. I find that the best way to gauge my opponents is to spar with them. So draw your sword and prepare yourself. Naruto drew his sword and sprinted forward. Jumping high into the air brought his sword down, meaning to cut the man in two. He was surprised to see that his sensei had already stepped to the side, and with one swift movement hit Naruto hard on the back with the backside of his blade. Naruto rolled away before jumping to his feet. You are quick, shinobi, I will give you that. But mere quickness is no substitute for a well-trained samurai with years of experience. The two clashed together several more times. Each time Naruto would be knocked away with a rough blow from the back of the older man's sword. Finally, in a fuming rage, he pushed chakra into his legs and moved blindly fast, trying to cut the man in two from the side. In one swift movement, the samurai crushed his right hand with the back of his sword, effectively disarming him. Another blow followed up on his collarbone, knocking him to his knees. The samurai rested the tip of his sword at Naruto's neck. You show promise, young shinobi, but you are young and brash. He removed the sword from his neck and tapped the top of his head. First you will learn to fight with this. Then he handed Naruto back his sword. Then I will teach you to fight with this. Looking over, Naruto could see that Sasuke was being similarly knocked around by his sensei. You will have time to worry about your friends later. Come now, you will start to learn the ancient and sacred art of the sword. Naruto stood up gingerly using his sword as a slight crutch. The older man nodded. Good, you show determination? That is key to any warrior. Now do as I do. The man began fluidly going through a kata while Naruto painfully tried to mimic him. The samurai smiled. Hosokawa was right. He will make an excellent student. Sakura walked into the large white tent with a red tent cross on the top. All around her she could see samurai between the ages of about 12 and into their 50s all lying around on canvas cots. Suddenly she felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning around, she could see a man in a white doctor's jacket looking down at her. You must be the kunoichi that Hosokawa said was coming to help us. Sakura nodded her head. He also said that you were unable to hear anything. Is that true? Sakura responded. Yes, although I have trained myself to read lips. The man nodded. Good, you'll be working with me for the next couple of months. Do you have any experience with being a medic? Sakura nodded her head. I know the basic medical ninjutsu. The older doctor shook his head. Ninjutsu is useless on those who have not developed their chakra pathways. You could pump all the healing chakra in the world into a normal civilian or samurai and their bodies would have no idea what to do with it. No, here you will learn true first aid, box them up and get them to the hospital. Sakura grimaced the way he said box them up but chose to keep her mouth shut. Now then, come here to get your gear. With that he led her down one of the aisles trying to explain to her the concept of doing stitches to hold the wound shut as he went. Naruto's arms were beginning to scream in complaint as he and Sasuke were run through various katas over and over. Any mistake was marked when their sensei would whack the offending appendage with a wooden sword. Needless to say, Sasuke and Naruto's arms, legs, and backs were covered in dark bruises. Again! Shouted Sasuke's sensei. Apparently their kata was still not up to the samurai par. After going through the agonizing movements once more, their senseis finally informed them that they were now ready to join the rest of the younger samurai in their daily training. Sakura was also being put through her paces. The samurai were often getting cut or injured in training, and since they were unable to be healed by healing ninjutsu like her teammates, the doctors had to patch them up the best that they could and rely on nature to take its course. It was rough training for all of them, but the training was beginning to pay off. Both Naruto and Sasuke were able to hold their own against most of the samurai who were a decade older than them. Sasuke seemed to have a little more natural skill than his blonde-haired teammate, but what Naruto lacked in natural talent, he more than made up for it in pure determination. He never seemed to have a limit to his energy, and he was a glutton for punishment. By the end of the second month, all three of them had taken their particular skills to a whole new level. Naruto had finally begun learning true katas for his longer nodachi while Sasuke was being trained to use a wakizashi that was about the same size as his ninjato. At the end of the second month, Naruto and Sasuke were sparring with two other of the older samurai. They had become adept in using the samurai standard katas, but their shinobi training still shined through when they tended to incorporate various acrobatic movements into their attacks. It wasn't uncommon to see them jump over opponents, or bend at incredible angles to avoid the swords of the more experienced samurai. Over the hill they could see Sakura running towards them. Hosokawa-sama has requested our presence at his tent, she panted out when she reached the other two shinobi. Naruto and Sasuke sheathed their swords and bowed to their opponents before turning around and running over the hill with Sakura in tow. As they approached a large red tent in the middle of the compound, they slowed down and composed themselves. They had learned over the past 2 months that where Hosokawa demanded the same respect that they would show to their own Hokage. Bowing to the guards outside the tent flaps were quickly opened and they were led inside. Inside they were surprised to see all three of their senseis and Sara-sensei. All three of them bowed low. Hosokawa-sama, senseis. All four of them bowed slightly in acknowledgement. Hosokawa stood up. I have never seen 3 young shinobi so dedicated to their arts as the 3 of you. I have no doubt that if you continue down this path, you will indeed become some of the most fearsome opponents that our enemies have ever faced. He waved over one of his assistants who came over carrying a black ebony box. The samurai have something that we call our bushido, our way of the warrior. It teaches us that we must practice frugality, loyalty, martial arts mastery, and honor unto our deaths. You shinobi have no such codes, however your sensei once gave a ninja way to you and you. Your nindo is damned by the flesh saved by the blood. The sandaime stood up and looked at the team. After I spent many months working with the samurai during my own youth, Hosokawa's grandfather helped me make that my personal nindo, and when I took over the ANBU as Hokage, I passed it on to them. As ANBU we have damned ourselves. We do what we must, by any means we must. However, our sins save thousands. We are damned by our flesh and saved by the blood. That is the nindo of the ANBU, and that is the nindo that we all follow till our deaths. Hosokawa took the black box from his assistant. Normally, when a samurai completes his training and joins our ranks, he is given a uniform and his swords. You, however, are not samurai, you are ninja and have no use for one of our uniforms, and you already have a sword. So I have made you these. He opened the box. It was lined in dark purple velvet and had 3 dark gray rings at the bottom. These rings are made out of the same steel that we make our samurai's swords. The inside of the ring has the nindo of the ANBU carved into it. The outside it is marked with the kanji from our Bushido, frugality, loyalty, martial arts mastery and honor. It also contains the family crest of the Hosokawa clan. Should you ever need rest, find one of the many armies of the Fire Country, and you will find sanctuary as far as we are able. The 3 bowed deeply once again. Sasuke spoke for the group. Your gift is far greater than we could possibly ever deserve. The general waved him off. Maybe you are right. But I believe in investing in the future, and you 3 are the future of this country. In the 2 short months that you have been here, my men have trained harder and achieved more than ever. Your mere presence has pushed others towards greatness. The general began walking towards the doorway. Your students are yours again, Sarutobi. Sarutobi bowed slightly to the general before turning towards his team. They were now all wearing the steel rings given to them by the general. When we return to Konoha, the Hokage has set up a mock fight between the 3 of you and a team of Chunin. Think of this as the next exam in your training. The Hokage was seated behind her large wooden desk looking over at the 2 Chunin seated in front of her. Izumo and Kotetsu, I have a favor to ask of you too. Both Chunin bowed. What can we do to be of service, Hokage-sama? Answered Kotetsu. I have a team of 3 ANBU trainees who are coming back from training abroad for a couple of months. I would like to ask the 2 of you to fight them in a no-bars-held match so that we can see just how far they have come. Both Chunin looked a little surprised. Hokage-sama, we are honored that you think that we are on the level of ANBU, but we are most likely not the best Chunin for the job. Tsunade waved her hand. Nonsense, you 2 are some of the finest Chunin in the village. Besides, these are not your normal ANBU, they are in a new special program that we are trying. When they started the training just a few months ago, they were still young genin. Both Chunin seemed to brighten at the fact that they were not fighting the hardened killers that ANBU was notorious for. Seeing the change in their demeanor, Tsunade smiled and clapped her hands. Excellent, be at Training Ground 7 this afternoon at 3. There will be several others in attendance to watch, of course, but no more than a few jounin. The 2 Chunin nodded their heads. Well, feel free to take the rest of the afternoon to prepare whatever it is that you need to get. These ANBU may be young, but I can guarantee that you'll want to be at your best to take them on. Several hours later, the 3 young masked ANBU stood in the clearing of Training Ground 7 staring at the 2 seasoned Chunin standing across from them. On the edge of the field stood several important clan heads, heirs, the Hokage, jounin including Hatake Kakashi, Sarutobi Asuma, and Yuhi Kurenai. Needless to say, Izumo and Kotetsu were a little intimidated just by the people that were present. Looking across from them, they glanced at the white masked ANBU trainees. All 3 were wearing the white masks, black cloaks of the ANBU. They also all seemed to be wearing some sort of identical rings on their right ring finger. If it weren't for the different swords strapped to their backs, it would be impossible to distinguish between the 3 of them. The tallest wore what appeared to be a standard issue ninjato from his back. The second tallest, who was only taller by a fraction of an inch, wore a much large katana. The last one didn't have a sword with her. Izumo leaned over towards Kotetsu. Hokage-sama wasn't kidding when she said they were genin. Look at them, they can't be any older than 11 or 12. Kotetsu nodded. Yeah, but don't lose track of them, we are outnumbered here. The Hokage strode out onto the open field. Okay, remember this is a mock battle between the 2-man Chunin team and the 3 young ANBU trainees. Anything goes, so feel free to use any jutsu at your disposal. Seeing that both sides were ready, she raised her right hand and quickly dropped it to the ground. Hajime begin. In a blink of an eye, Izumo and Kotetsu were on the defense, blocking sword attacks from both of the younger boys. Izumo was barely able to keep up with the taller of the two, but the smaller one's attacks had so much power behind each swing that blocking them repeatedly was beginning to make his arms go numb. Looking over, he could see that Kotetsu was having a similar problem. Normally the pair fought well together because they would play to each other's strengths and pick apart their opponents. But it seemed that these young ANBU had foreseen this and broke them apart as quickly as possible. Finally seeing an opening to get back to his teammate, Izumo jumped and was about to strike the katana-wielding ANBU when a series of 10 Saban needles dug deep into his legs, effectively stopping him in his tracks. Kotetsu turned when he heard his teammate yell, just to feel the tip of the shorter one's ninjato prick his neck. "Yield," said the much smaller ninja. Kotetsu raised an arm and gave up. Tsunade walked out clapping. "Very good, all of you. ANBU, return to your base, your sensei is waiting for you there." The three ANBU bowed their heads and immediately disappeared into the trees. Tsunade turned back to the two Chunin who were standing there looking rather humiliated. "Do not feel bad about your loss here today. Those three are going to be some of the most powerful ninja that have ever lived in Konoha. You were chosen to fight them not only for your ability to work together, but also because everyone listens to you. You have a new mission. Wherever you go in Konoha, I want you to spread the word that Konoha has a new ANBU, you can call them this." She handed them a piece of paper and walked away. She had more work to do before the day was over. The team was quickly thrown back into their intense training. Sara began teaching them how to work their new and old skills together to make them even more formidable. Naruto began learning to use his prized ninjutsu while he was attacking. Sakura learned to cast multiple genjutsu while still attacking ranged and setting up traps. Sasuke learned to combine his brutal taijutsu with his kenjutsu. They worked hard and learned much. But today their short 6 months of relative peace had come to an end. Today was the time for their last exam. Seeing them finish the workout that Sarutobi had set them to, Tsunade leapt down from the balcony. Instantly all three of them were on high alert, watching her to see if she was just another challenge that their sensei had set them to. "Come here." In the blink of an eye, the three were kneeling in front of her. "When you first began working together, Sara told you that there were no secrets between teammates in the ANBU. Holding true to this tradition, I have something to tell you." She paused to take a deep breath. Almost 11 years ago, the Kyuubi was rampaging through the surrounding countries. After a couple of weeks, it set its eyes on Konoha. The Yondaime Hokage died, taking the Kyuubi with him. At least that's what the academy told you. She paused again. In reality, something made completely out of chakra could never be killed. So it was sealed into an orphan newborn baby. A baby named Uzumaki Naruto. All three of them knelt there completely shocked. After several seconds, Naruto began shaking. Although he was unable to say anything, it was painfully obvious that he was crying behind his mask. Suddenly Naruto felt someone pull him into a tight embrace. Opening his eyes, he was surprised to see his pink-haired teammate holding him in the tight embrace. Suddenly someone patted him on his back. Sasuke was standing there, his hand resting on Naruto's shoulder. "You are nothing more than its jailer, but you are more than that. First and foremost, you are our teammate, and the closest thing I have to a family." Naruto broke down crying at those words. Sasuke still rarely spoke, but it had never become clearer to them how close the three had become in the last several months. "Kai," they heard from where the Hokage was standing. All three of their masks suddenly crashed to the floor, shattering on impact. "You are no longer trainees, therefore you will not wear the masks of one." She pulled out a scroll and quickly unsealed 3 masks. "From this day forward, these are your new masks. They have been specially made for each of you." Naruto looked down at the set of masks and almost laughed. On the masks was what appeared to be a cartoonist's impression of a monkey's face. One had the monkey's hands covering his eyes, another with the hands over the ears, and the last with the hands over the mouths. "Sasuke, from henceforth you shall be known as Mizaru, the See No Evil Monkey. Sakura, from henceforth you shall be known as Kikazaru, the Hear No Evil Monkey. Naruto, from henceforth you shall be known as Iwazaru, the Say No Evil Monkey." She handed each of them their respective masks. "The same seals that were attached to your training masks also exist on these. The difference is that if you apply chakra into this mask, the seal will release until you stop the flow." Each one of them channeled chakra into the masks. The hands of the monkeys disappeared, the faces became identical. The mouths were open in a feral grin with sharp teeth. The eyes were wide and stared at you like a hungry animal waiting to strike. All in all, the masks became downright terrifying. From this point onwards, your team shall be known as Team Sanin, the Three Wise Monkeys. Report to my office tomorrow morning for your first assignment. Pack for at least a month-long trip. The three freshly graduated ANBU all nodded and disappeared quickly, leaving the Hokage and her predecessor alone in the large cavern. You did well for such a short time, Sarutobi-sensei. Sarutobi yawned and stretched as he replied. Those kids will change the world someday, you just watch. Later that evening, the three newly graduated ANBU sat in their room's large onsen. Sakura, who was sipping at some fresh lemonade, asked, So what do we do now? We've been training for so many months, I'm not even sure what we're supposed to do now. Naruto shrugged. I suppose we follow orders and see where the road leads us. Sasuke nodded his head in approval. Before my mother was killed, she told me. I haven't a clue as to how my story will end. But that's all right. When you set out on a journey and night covers the road, you don't conclude the road has vanished. And how else could we discover the stars? Naruto smiled. You know, imagine the looks on the other Genin's faces when they find out years from now that the three kick-ass ANBU that they heard about as kids were really their friends. Sasuke smiled and Sakura laughed a little. Ino will never let me live that one down. Naruto took a deep breath. It was cold. Tsunade had sent the Sanin to the far northern border of Waterfall Country. Even at a ninja's pace, the travel had taken over a week. A small iron mining community rested up here, nestled in the sleepy mountain ranges. The community had recently been ransacked by a series of hit-and-run attacks. Each time they hit one of the large wagon trains that were transporting the much-needed iron down towards Hi-no-Kuni. It had become apparent that the bandits attacking must be missing Nin, just because of the extreme skill they had shown in taking out the hired guards and getting away with the stolen goods. Normally, a mission like this would be handled by a country's own ninja, but Taki's ninja were spread thin the way it was, and since all the iron from these mines was going to Konoha anyways, it fell to their team. It was winter up here in the mountains. Soon the cold would begin reaching down along the coast and into the land of waves. Naruto was standing in the branches of a century-old pine tree far about the mountain pass, surveying the land below. The night was silent as snow softly drifted down, covering the land in a light powdery covering. He took a handful of the icy snow and lifted his mask up. Shoving the cold snow into his mouth, he grimaced. It may just be frozen water, but it still isn't as good as regular water, he thought. He heard a crunch of the soft snow somewhere down the path. Moving as little as possible, he peered down the tight mountain pass. A wagon train was slowly beginning to make its way down the frozen trail. The train was slowly making its way down the mountain pass. Looking over to the other side of the pass, just off to the side of the trail, he could just make out Sasuke standing absolutely still. Unless you knew where he was, you would pass him off for nothing more than a rock. Sakura was located somewhere in the train itself, just in case something happened that Sasuke or Naruto were unable to get to. Naruto sat, waiting for the train to get closer. Whoever was attacking these trains were good, but not flawless. They tended to attack at random intervals, but always within the same general area. They had staked the mountainside out for nearly 3 days now. As a child, he had always imagined the higher-ranked missions to be all action. Explosions and jutsu flying everywhere. Sadly, it seemed B-rank missions were not nearly as exciting as he had hoped for. So far, all of them consisted of sitting in one location, waiting for a perfect moment to strike at an opponent. Not really all that exciting. And once they were into a fight, it never lasted more than several minutes at most. Thinking back, he did remember Sarah-sensei saying something about that. A true ninja's battle is decided within the opening moments of the fight. ANBU do not warm up in a fight. When we strike, we hit hard and fast. A good ninja never cuts twice. He had always assumed the man over-exaggerated things a little much, but it seemed he was right in this stance. Suddenly, movement coming from the other direction caught his eye. There were 3 figures rapidly closing in. In one smooth motion, Naruto drew his large nodachi and leapt from the trees, plummeting to the frozen earth far below. As he fell silently, he could see the lead ninja begin throwing a series of shuriken at the lead guard. Not that they ever reached him, of course. Even before they left his hands, the still blinded Sasuke had drawn his ninjato and cleanly blocked every single one. The 3 ninjas stopped and assumed a fighting stance. The tall one in the front, who wore a nondescript white trench coat with a white bandana around his head, stopped. Shit! Anbu spinning on his heel, trying to run away, he called out to his team scatter. Just in time to be stabbed through the chest with Naruto's no dachi. The man struggled for a second. His head spun around wildly as he saw his man on the right get cut down by Sasuke's lightning-fast ninjato. It looked as if his last teammate may be home free, but a series of saban flew past his head and embedded themselves into the base of the man's neck. A minute ago, another flawless victory seemed imminent to the wayward Kumonin. However, 30 seconds after that the three Anbu showed up, and in another 30 seconds the team was eradicated. Looking up, he felt Naruto slide the blade from his chest and shake the blood from it before sheathing it. Seeing his mask, he laughed. So it's true. Konoha-san, and he coughed violently, blood and spittle spraying the snow. In Kumo they said you were a rumor Iwazaru. I guess that's what I get for not listening. With that he fell all the way to the ground. The thin blanket of snow quickly melted as the warm blood made contact. Looking up, he shared a nod with his teammates. He bent down and removed the man's hitite and placed it in the pouch on his belt. He picked up the dead man's body and jumped back up the cliff side. The NBU policy stated that they burned the bodies, but they couldn't start a fire in the middle of the path without someone noticing, and using a jutsu in the snow-entrenched mountains was just asking for an avalanche. Several miles away, the team found a relatively flat spot out of the way. Channeling some chakra to his mask, Naruto removed the mask's silencing seal and used a small but hot fire jutsu to burn the bodies to ashes. After a couple of minutes the flames died down, and with a quick wind jutsu, he banished the ashes to the far corners of the earth. No words were spoken between the team. There were none needed. They stood at the edge of a ridge's precipice staring over the moonlight landscape. Then they were gone. To a passing eye they were nothing more than wraiths of the night. Never seen or heard, but they were there nonetheless. The travel out of the mountains was the longest part of the trek back. There is no easy way through mountains. You can go around them, like the civilians often do, but that adds unnecessary miles to the trip. The fast way is to just go over them, but the thin oxygen and rough terrain are taxing. Naruto jumped over one particularly high cliff and landed in a crouch. Looking around he surveyed the area. Seconds later another soft landing indicated that Sasuke had caught up. Naruto looked over at his teammate. Iwazaru, Sasuke said, getting Naruto's attention, we should make camp here for the night, Kikazaru is getting tired. Nodding, Naruto began setting up the tent on the small cliffside ledge. Sakura was still somewhere up on the cliff's wall keeping watch over the surrounding area. While Naruto was working on the sleeping arrangements, Sasuke began making their dinner. Inbu rarely had the luxury of a fire, but new advancements in chemistry allowed for hot meals. The food came in 2 bags, one that the water was heated in. The other held the soup that they would be eating. Filling the first bag with a little water from his canteen, he dropped the white powdery tablets in. Immediately the water began to get hot. He dropped the smaller bag filled with the soup inside and set it on the ground while it cooked. After staking down the small 3-man tent, Naruto looked up at the small overhang above. He could make out Sakura flying through hand seals, no doubt placing various genjutsu around the campsite to reduce the chance that some wandering eye would see them. After several minutes and at least 3 genjutsu, Sakura gracefully leapt off the overhang, landing next to Naruto. Is the soup done yet? She asked quietly. Sasuke, who was rummaging through his pack looking for some bowls, answered. It has a minute yet, but it will be done soon. Sakura sighed, and in a rather ungraceful manner, plopped down on a hard rock to sit. We've been traveling through these damn rocks for near a week already. I say next time we request a mission in someplace tropical. Naruto nodded his head. The constant cold was starting to get to him. After a couple of minutes of just sitting around, the soup was finally hot. It was made of nothing except some dried vegetables, noodles, and some broth. Naturally, Naruto thought it was amazing. Once dinner was done, and they were ready to retire, Naruto activated his mask and muttered, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu. 5 of the clones popped into existence, and simultaneously leapt to different locations around the campsite to keep watch for the night. Without a word the original ducked into the tent, and lied down beside his teammates. Miles behind them, a group of Kumo Hunter-nin stood at the site that their bodies had been burned. It seems that the rumors have some truth to them after all, said the one who was apparently the leader of the group. A younger-sounding and obviously less experienced hunter looked at him. What rumors, sir? The taller man looked away from the scorched earth, south towards Konoha. There have been rumors that Konoha has trained another one of their infamous free response teams. The younger one made no sound, obviously confused. Third member of the team, a large man with 2 swords on his back, answered for the captain. When Konoha senses a war coming, they increase their training programs dramatically and turn out some very powerful individuals, just like every other village tries to do. However, they also train one team, called the Free Response Team. The leader started talking. They couldn't have had any information about this mission besides those wagon trains being attacked. Normally a village would send a couple of rookie chunin to scout around and see who was attacking them, then report back if it was enemy ninja. Then the village would send out a jounin with some chunin backup to remove them. This, however, he pointed to the ground where the scorched earth was. This was done by a single team. The youngest one was still confused. How do you know it was one team? The older one sighed. I hate replacements, he thought idly to himself. Look, they wouldn't have had enough time to go back to Konoha and get a jounin team here before we tracked them down. That means that it must have been one team. On top of that, the Hokage would never needlessly send off a jounin, it's a waste of manpower. Which means this is probably the work of a free response team. A team that is trained to go into tough situations with little or no knowledge. The youngest one nodded his head, finally starting to understand. So what do we do now? Their captain shrugged. Not much to do, they have almost a week's lead on us. Even if we did catch them, we have no idea what skill level they are. Except that they managed to kill the 3 chunin without any collateral damage. He turned around towards the north and began walking. So we returned to Kumo and tell the Kage. Tsunade was sitting in her office, reading over the various mission reports that had been brought in throughout the day. Most of them were of little importance, and were divvied up between the various office workers to be filed. She was currently reading through the report that Team Sanan had turned in. They had arrived sometime the night before and placed the mission report directly into her inbox. Stupid brats, she thought. While turning in the mission report was important, they had done it after hours, which meant they had to have snuck by at least 4 chunin and a jounin to do it. She had given them the day off to get some much-needed rest before taking off into missions and training again. She put the small scroll down into a file, just as someone knocked at the door. Without waiting for a response, the door swung open. Without looking up, she greeted the man at the door. I know that this used to be your office and all, Sarutobi-sensei, but you could at least wait for me to call you in. Sarutobi waved her off. You never used to wait for me. I'm just returning the favor. He sat down in one of the nicely padded chairs across from Tsunade. Now then, about my team. Tsunade looked up for the next mission report that she had started to skim. What about them? Sarutobi sighed. They need to begin the next portion of their training soon, preferably after the chunin exams that are in a couple of months. They are good as is, but if they are going to be a real terror during the war, they will need allies in the summoning realm. Tsunade nodded her head. Makes sense, I suppose. Why do you want to have them wait till after the exam, though? Sarutobi chuckled. Well, I suppose we could start before, but we need to get that roaming lecher of a teammate back to give us a hand first. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Why does Jiraiya need to be here? He's doing more good out there than he would if he was just sitting around the village peeping on women. Sarutobi reaching into his pocket and withdrew his pipe and a small tin of tobacco. Taking a pinch of the flavored tobacco, he rolled it between his fingers before beginning to pack the pipe. It seemed only fitting that Naruto learn from him, given his heritage. Tsunade's eyebrow rose. I assume then that you will want me to take over the girls' training? Sarutobi nodded his head. That was the plan. Tsunade shook her head. It sounds like you're trying to recreate the Sannin old man. Their team names may be similar, but they are not us. Sarutobi, while lighting his pipe, shook his head. Taking a deep draught of the nicotine-filled smoke, he started talking again. Well, obviously not. Orochimaru took his family's snake scroll with him when he fled the village. No, I have a special plan for Sasuke. Tsunade, looking back up from her paperwork. And what plan would that be? Sarutobi chuckled. A few years ago I received a very special gift from an old enemy turned friend. But that is story for a later date. Seeing that he wasn't going to tell her what he had up his sleeve, she relented. Well, regardless, if all you were planning on waiting for was Jiraiya, your wait is over. It seems that Orochimaru has something planned for the Chunin exams, so he came back ahead of schedule. Sarutobi nodded. Good, then we will start immediately tomorrow morning. Tell him to meet me at the cabin atop the Hokage's mountain. I'll send Sakura to meet with you down here. Tsunade stared at the man. Who are you to tell me what to do? Sarutobi laughed and began walking out of the room. I'm your sensei too, remember? Naruto was walking around the town, foregoing his ANBU outfit for once. Per standards, they had the day following the return from a mission off to recuperate. Sasuke had chosen to practice his kenjutsu with some other ANBU named Nico. Sakura went to visit her grandmother. Naruto sighed and adjusted the sword that was still strapped to his back. He was slowly making his way over to the public onsen. He was just walking over a small bridge into the large gardens that were the center of the large onsen, when he heard someone giggling behind some bushes. Jumping over the railing of the bridge, he landed on top of the hot stream and walked downstream a little to get a better look at whoever was hiding back there. A man, wearing some sort of green pants and a red vest with a large scroll hanging across his back, was peering through a small gap in the fence. Naruto glowered. It was a pervert. In his mind, a pervert that peeped on women should be just as illegal as someone who stalked them. Moving silently, he walked up behind the man, slowly drawing his large sword. When he was just about to give the pervert a whack over the head with the flat of his blade, he heard, "Don't even think about it, brat, I'm working here." Naruto froze in mid-swing as the man had turned to face him. Working? You're not working. You're just a pervert, Naruto exclaimed loudly. The man sneered at Naruto and jumped to his feet. I'm not a pervert, he denied vehemently, and then he broke into a huge grin. I'm a super pervert. The man's smile faded after a second. Now get out of here, I have work to do. With that, he gave Naruto a small shove that sent him flying back into the stream that he had walked down on. Then he sat back down and began giggling and writing in his small notebook. Naruto landed in a pile inside the hot stream. After untangling himself from some seaweed, Naruto clambered back up to the top of the stream. Seeing the man still sitting there, scribbling furiously away inside of his notebook, Naruto's face turned red. Bringing his sword around in front quickly, he channeled a little chakra and yelled, Futon, Kamaitachi no Jutsu. The man spun back around and batted the attack away as if it were just an annoying fly. Last warning, kid, go away. The older man seemed to be in no mood for fighting with some snot-nosed brat. Naruto shook his head. I don't need to, I've already solved the problem. With a half-rammed seal, Naruto shined away from the area, not stopping until he was just outside of the men's baths. Taking a deep breath, he waited for a second. Then he heard it. Jiraiya was sitting still facing where Naruto had been standing just moments before. What did he mean by he already solved the problem? Turning back around to continue his research, Jiraiya put his face back up against the wooden enclosure. As his face made contact, he felt the whole fence start to shift. Looking over, he saw the ropes that anchored the fence, lying limp on the ground. They had been cut by Naruto's deflected attack. With a crash, the whole fence hit the ground, and every woman in the onsen turned to see what caused the commotion. Feeling every woman's eyes glaring into him, Jiraiya grinned. Hello? Pervert. Jiraiya frowned. This is going to hurt. Naruto was sitting calmly in the hot waters of the onsen. With a groan, he slowly slid down till his eyes were just above the water. Gaki. Naruto stuck his head back out of the water and looked around. In front of him was a battered and bruised Jiraiya. You owe me a new notebook. The old man was surprisingly angry. I owe you nothing, Naruto stood up. His bath had been ruined. Don't you know who I am? Naruto turned back around, just in time to see the man start doing some ridiculous dance on top of a rock. Naruto threw a rock at him. Of course I know who you are. You're the Gamasenin, Jiraiya. Jiraiya's face fell. Well, if you knew who I am, why on earth would you attack me and ruin my research? Naruto shrugged. I don't like perverts. Jiraiya grumbled. He was about to teach the kid a lesson, but he saw a messenger hawk circling above. Jiraiya looked over at the kid, surprised to see him staring at the hawk too. What are you looking at, Gaki? You know they never call Genin by Messenger Hawk. Naruto frowned. Say whatever you want, Ero-senin, but I've got to get going. Naruto turned around and began walking back towards the changing rooms. Hey! Jiraiya called out after him. Seeing that Naruto was completely ignoring him, he started to chuckle. Oh boy, I think I'm going to like this kid. Sakura was sitting at the kitchen table with her grandmother, idly chatting about nothing at all. So do you like your team? Her grandmother asked. Basan, Sakura chided, you know I can't tell you about them. The elderly woman waved her off. Nonsense, you just can't tell me specifics, but code names and what they're like isn't classified. Sakura smiled. As usual, her grandmother had found a way around the rules again. Well, let's see, one is named Mizaru. He's fun to hang out with, but he can sometimes be a little bit of a sociopath. The old lady sighed. Unfortunately, that isn't all that uncommon in the shinobi ranks. Eventually you begin to see so much bloodshed that you decide it's better to just not feel anything. Sakura's eyes widened. That's horrible. Her grandmother nodded. A change in personality for ninja isn't uncommon at all. Sakura stared at her grandmother. You know, Basan, I always just assumed you were a ninja years ago, but you never talk about it, and you never talk about your old friends. The grandmother sighed. Many years ago, not long after the first Shinobi War, I was recruited into ANBU. It was just after me and all my friends had started making Chunin rank. I was one of the few genjutsu users in the village at that time. She stared solemnly out of the window. ANBU was different then. On and off the fields, we were targeted by our enemies, so we told no one who we were. We had no one to talk to, because even our own teammates didn't know our identities, and you sure as hell didn't talk about ANBU missions outside of ANBU. The old woman had a tear run down her face. By the time I left ANBU, the Second War was just finishing, thanks to the Sannin. So I hung up my mask. She sighed deeply, as if trying to ward away unwanted memories. My first sensei tried to warn me off from joining the ANBU. He told me, you wear the mask for so long. You eventually forget who you are beneath it. I didn't believe him, of course. I was young and adventurous. The problem is that he was right. When I got out, I didn't know how to act anymore. After several months I realized that I had lost any of my friends that were still alive, and I decided it was time to be done with it all. So I boxed up all my gear and started as a receptionist at the tower. She smiled fondly. I met your grandfather there. Sakura smiled sadly at her grandmother. Her grandfather had passed away almost 20 years ago now, but her grandmother was still very much in love with him. It was sweet, but sad. Sakura heard a light pecking sound at the window. A dark brown hawk was sitting on the windowsill pecking at the glass. It had a small metal band with the kanji for Hokage carved into it. A direct calling from the Hokage? Her grandmother seemed rather surprised. Sakura sighed. I'm sorry, Basan, but I have to go. Her grandmother stood up slowly and walked over to give her a hug. Just don't forget, no matter where you go or who you become, you are always my granddaughter, and I love you. Sakura let a small tear run down her eye. I know, Basan, I know. Good, you're all here, stated Tsunade as Naruto finally made his way into her office. Both Sasuke and Sakura were already seated in front of her desk waiting. Sorry, I got kind of hung up by a pervert, Naruto informed them. Seeing the questioning look and slightly horrified look on his teammates' faces, he smacked his forehead. I probably could have worded that better, he mumbled to himself as he took a seat on a chair in front of the Hokage's desk. Tsunade shook her head. Well, anyways, I called you here to inform you that as of today, you are each being assigned a personal sensei who will train you for the next couple of months. They should be arriving here shortly. Immediately after she finished talk, the door to her office burst open. YOSH. Hokage-sama, where is the youthful young man that you have asked me to lead into the bright springtime of his life? The man was wearing an absurd skin-tight green outfit with orange leg warmers and a jounin vest. He had his hatai tied around his waist like some sort of belt. Good, I'm glad you were able to make it on such short notice, guy, said Tsunade as she smirked. The three team members all stared at the man rather slack-jawed. So, Which one of these youthful companions is going to learn taijutsu from Konoha's green beast? Yelled Guy, with what was a completely unnecessary amount of enthusiasm. Ah hell, muttered Sasuke. In the blink of an eye, the green man held Sasuke in a bone-breaking bear hug. YOSH. Sasuke-kun, together we will work towards the springtime of youth that is taijutsu. Sasuke just stared blandly at the man, before turning to address everyone that was present. Before I leave, I just want you to know that I hate you all. He turned and glared pointedly at Sarutobi. But I always hated you the most, more than anyone else, it was always you. What an unyouthful thing to say to one's sensei. Guy seemed momentarily disappointed before he quickly recovered. YOSH. We will do 100 laps around Konoha for being disrespectful. He grabbed Sasuke's arm and started dragging him out of the room. And if we cannot do that, we will do 5,000 push-ups, and if we cannot do that we will. His voice finally started to fade as he got further down the hallway. Sakura, the first to get over the shock, asked the question that was wearing heavily on both her and Naruto's mind. Who the hell was that? She asked quizzically. Tsunade and Sarutobi laughed. That, believe it or not, is one of the most accomplished taijutsu users in the world. Despite being rather odd, he is one of the most powerful jounin in the village. Naruto sighed. So you're breaking up the team? Sarutobi smiled, happy that the team had become so attached to one another in such a short time. It's only for a couple of months while you learn from a new sensei. So who is going to train me? Asked Naruto. That would be me, you damn gaki. Naruto spun around and pointed a finger at the man standing behind him. Ero Sennin? You're kidding me, this pervert is my sensei. Not even a half hour ago I caught Naruto was silenced as Jiraiya clamped a hand down around his mouth. Well, look at the time, Tsunadeheim. Guess I better be on my way and start training the brat. He took off in a shunshin before Naruto had time to react. Sakura was left sitting in the office with only herself and the Hokage. So who will be teaching me? She asked. Surprisingly, Tsunade stood up. I will. You need to lighten up, Gaki, said Jiraiya, who had an irate Naruto slung over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. He dropped Naruto onto the ground. What on earth could a hopeless, perverted, washed-up ninja possibly have to teach me that Sara-sensei hasn't already? Obviously, Naruto was none too pleased about the teaching arrangements. Jiraiya rubbed the back of his head. Okay, I admit that I am a pervert, but I am also considered to be the strongest of the Sannin. Plus I was the one who trained the Yondaime. Naruto's ears perked up. You trained the Yondaime? Jiraiya stuck his chest out, obviously proud of himself. Damn right I did. The best student I ever had. And I'm going to start training you the same way I did with him. Naruto, getting excited now. And how did you do that? Jiraiya's smile grew to epic proportions. I made him act like an idiot. Sasuke was sitting next to a small campfire out in the middle of only God knows where with his new sensei. He was so tired he could hardly sit up as Guy began making dinner. Why do you push yourself so far, Sasuke? Sasuke was surprised. This was the first time he had seen Guy actually just talk, not yelling like an idiot. I'm not sure that I understand what you mean, Sasuke answered. Guy set down the pot that he was making dinner in and let it just simmer near the fire. There are a lot of reasons to fight in this world, not all of them are right. Sasuke sighed. He may not be the cold fish that he had been just over half a year ago, but he didn't like opening up to random strangers. Guy shook his head and started talking. My father used to tell my brother and I, those who want to live, let them fight, and those who do not want to fight in this world of eternal struggle do not deserve to live. * 4 years we trained by that motto so that we would be able to stand up to his ideal. Then the war came, I joined ANBU along with my rival Hatake Kakashi. He sighed deeply. About a month into it, I was on what was supposed to be a routine border patrol when everything went wrong. My brother's team had been ambushed not far from where I was located. I got there as quick as I could, but he was already dead. I went ballistic, and opened 7 of the celestial gates. My chakra was so thick that it looked green to everyone around me. I slaughtered almost 40 Iwanin that day before I collapsed from exhaustion, earning me the name, Konoha's Green Beast. Sasuke stared at the fire. Granted, he had only known the man for less than 1 day, but the idea of such a cheerful person killing that many shinobi was mind-boggling. Before he even realized that he was talking. If you had asked me the same question a year ago, I would have told you that I lived to avenge my clan and kill my brother. There was a pause. So what do you believe in now, Sasuke? Sasuke fell onto his back and stared at the stars that were beginning to emerge. I'm not sure anymore. I still hate him, but something has changed. Guy nodded his head. Tomorrow, we will begin your training. I have a technique that I will teach to you, but in return, when you decide what it is that you fight for, I want you to tell me. Sasuke nodded his head as he accepted the bowl of beef stew that Guy finished cooking. Of course, sensei. Act like an idiot? Naruto was beyond confused. This man, who was supposedly one of the greatest ninja that had ever been produced in Konoha, was not only a complete and utter pervert, but also just told him to be an idiot. Jiraiya nodded his head. Well, not necessarily an idiot, but you need to understand this before we go any further. Jiraiya motioned for Naruto to come and sit next to him. There was another team of genin on the other side of the field being trained by some unknown jounin. They sat in silence for a second before Jiraiya started talking again. This is possibly the most important piece of information that I will ever give you, so make sure that you remember this. Naruto, still a little confused, just agreed. The biggest part to being a ninja is deception. You only let your enemies see what you want them to see. Right now, unless you have that NBU mask on, you wear your heart on your sleeve, and that will eventually get you and your team into trouble. So you do what all ninja eventually do, you create an incorporeal mask to hide behind. You become a pervert, a hopeless gambler, or an idiot. That or you lock up your emotions completely and try to ignore them. Naruto looked confused. Wouldn't it be better to just forget emotions? Jiraiya shook his head. Many would agree with you, but I know of only a few shinobi who tried to do that. Uchiha Itachi did that and he killed his entire clan. Orochimaru tried to, and he ended up doing inhumane experiments on his comrades. Naruto, starting to understand, commented. Humans can't hide their emotions forever, so it's better to mask them than to truly get rid of them, is what you're saying? Jiraiya broke into a smile. Now you're getting it, Gaki. When we're done training here, you'll be a full-blown idiot, and more powerful than ever. Naruto shook his head vehemently. I'll hide behind a mask, but not as an idiot. I was one of those for too many years the way it was. Jiraiya looked confused. He had read the kid's file and he knew that if it hadn't been for his outstanding ninjutsu scores he may not have even passed the academy, so he had figured the idiot persona would be perfect. So what are you going to do then? Naruto turned his head at a goofy angle and adopted an irritated look on his face. Just get on with the training already, Erosenin. Jiraiya grinned. Come on, Gaki, if you're going to be a smartass you at least gotta look like one. Several hours later Naruto was standing back in the field with Jiraiya. There, now you're ready. Naruto looked at his outfit. He admitted he did like it a lot more than the standard issue ANBU uniform. He had a black and dark orange jacket on. The shoulders were a heavy matte black material which ran across the back and down the sides. The rest of the jacket was a dark burnt orange color with a few various pockets on it. The pants were similar, dark orange with the black running down the sides. It had a black chain that hung loosely on the right side. His hair hung loosely over his height and framed his face. Sticking out of his mouth was a black ebony pipe. The only thing that remained from his old uniform was his weapons pouch on the back of his belt and his no-dachi slung across his back. Okay, so I get the clothes, but explain to me why I have the pipe again? Jiraiya laughed. Trust me, it works with the outfit, plus it will help you to get along with Gamabunta. Besides, with the Kyuubi inside of you, you could smoke constantly for 100 years and you'd have nothing to show from it. Naruto looked at the pipe, still not completely sure about it. Jiraiya swiped the pipe out of his hands and began packing it, and one of his own. Taking a match, he lit the lightly flavored tobacco and handed the pipe back to Naruto. Here, just try the damn thing. Naruto took a small puff off the pipe, not truly inhaling it. It's not bad, I suppose. Jiraiya grinned a little. Look, kid, in this world you'll find that you only have 3 things to dull the pain: nicotine, alcohol, and caffeine. And you can't have alcohol on missions, so that kind of limits your choices. Naruto tapped out the pipe and let it hang empty from his mouth. So when do we start the real training? Jiraiya, instantly readopting the mask that he had dropped when he started talking to Naruto earlier in the day, replied. Tomorrow, tonight we go peeping. He let a huge perverted smirk appear on his face. Naruto instantly understood someone was watching who wasn't supposed to be there. You're an idiot. Naruto seamlessly let his newly adopted mask of an apathetic smart ass slip into place as well, hoping that it would pass the test. Jiraiya apparently ignored Naruto's comment as he kept on rambling as they began walking towards the town. She was so beautiful, satin skin, smooth black hair, ooh, but I still smell her. Jiraiya inhaled deeply through his nose. Women! What can you say? Who made them? God must have been a freaking genius. The hair, they say the hair is everything, you know. Have you ever buried your nose in a mountain of curls just wanted to go to sleep forever? Or lips, and when they touched, yours were like that first swallow of wine after you just crossed the desert. Tits. Hooah! Big ones, little ones, staring right out at ya, like secret searchlights. Legs. I don't care if they're perfect columns or second-hand Steinways. What's between passport to heaven? Jiraiya glanced sideways at this younger companion, seeing his walking with his hand in his pockets and pipe smoking slightly as it hung from the corner of his mouth. Jiraiya playfully smacked him upside the head. Hey! Are you listening to me, son? I'm giving you pearls here. Naruto grumbled as they continued on their way down the trail. After a couple 100 yards, they sensed their unknown spy take off back to wherever he had come from. Jiraiya shared a smirk with his new student. Welcome to the masquerade, Gaki. Tomorrow we'll start our actual training. While Naruto and Jiraiya were working on Naruto's new persona, Sakura and Tsunade were having a similar discussion. Tsunade-sama, not that I doubt what you're telling me and everything, but why do I have to dress like this again? Sakura was beyond embarrassed. At first she had been thrilled that the Hokage offered to buy her a new outfit. But this was just too much. The entire outfit consisted of black zip-up tank top and a pair of red shorts that seemed to be about 2 sizes too small. Look, Sakura, you're a beautiful young kunoichi, and that is a huge advantage in a fight. It's distracting to almost all men and some women. Sakura shook her head. So you mean perverts like Jiraiya? Tsunade looked nonplussed. You'd be surprised how much of that perversion is just a mask that he uses, just like I used to be a drunken gambler. Tsunade saw her disciple's confusion. Look, kid, the world's tough, and if you're going to survive, you need to be smarter and tougher than your opponents. Learn to look underneath the underneath. Jiraiya is no more of a pervert than any man, but he plays it off. By being a pervert, he is ignored in almost every village as long as he goes to the red light districts. Very few people know this, but there are about 20 prostitutes in every major city across the map that work for Jiraiya, and no one suspects him going to the brothels because he's a pervert. Just like I used to let my girls almost hang out of my clothes and gamble and drink because no one ever suspected that I was just getting information. I have more money than I can ever manage to lose, and my title as the legendary sucker makes most places turn a blind eye to the fact that I'm also a Sannin just so they can get some of the money. Sakura stared at her new sensei. So what you're saying is that I have to dress like this so I can get information easier? Tsunade nodded. A lot of genjutsu mistresses use their looks to their advantage. If the enemy is staring at your chest or legs, they never notice the genjutsu being cast. Sakura looked back down at her appearance. She nervously twisted the ring that Hosokawa had given her on her finger. I suppose. I'll do whatever I have to. Tsunade smiled. Good to know, because these upcoming months are going to be hell for you. I'm not that good at genjutsu, so I will only be training you in basic taijutsu and some medic nin skills. My older apprentice Shizun, however, is an accomplished genjutsu mistress, and she will be the one to complete your training in that field. Seeing that Sakura understood, Tsunade unsealed a huge quantity of what looked like baseballs. Good, then let's get training then, shall we? Lesson 1: Dodging. We aren't made of muscle like our male teammates, so we can't afford to be hit as often. Especially as a medic and genjutsu user. Tsunade threw the ball at Sakura's chest, which Sakura barely dodged, only to be hit in the ankle by a different ball. You're going to have to be a lot faster than that, Sakura. Gaki, get over here! Jiraiya yelled out to Naruto, who was meditating beneath a waterfall many miles outside of Konoha. Jiraiya had brought him back into the mountains. There was a small cabin there that he claimed he had used when he needed to get away from the village and all the prying eyes. It was nothing special. It only had one bedroom and a small living area/kitchen. but it was protected by a strong seal-based genjutsu to keep unwanted visitors out. Apparently, besides Naruto and Jiraiya, only Tsunade, Sarutobi, and someone named Kakashi were able to get into the area. Naruto walked over towards his sensei. They had established a rule during their training: there were no masks. As soon as they were done for the day, though, the masks went back on. Jiraiya went back to being a philandering, lascivious man, and Naruto to an apathetic, wise guy. We're running short on time here, and unless we start being a little drastic, you may not be ready for the Chunin exams. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Why, what's happening at the Chunin exams? There is a possibility of attack, but more than likely Tsunade will choose that moment to showcase the three of you. And while as a team you can take on a Jounin, individually you're not ready for that much attention. Naruto stood in front of his sensei. Okay, so what do I need to do then? Jiraiya smirked. I'm glad you asked. He bit his thumb and flew through a few quick hand seals. Kuchios no Jutsu. Summoning technique. There was a large puff of smoke. As the smoke dissipated, Naruto found himself facing a toad that was twice the size of a grown man. Jiraiya nodded at the toad and took a large scroll from the toad's mouth before it returned from whence it came. This is the summoning contract for the toads, Naruto. I would like you to sign it. Naruto stared at the scroll in awe. To have a summoning contract was a great honor, one usually reserved for heirs to great and ancient clans. To have one freely given was almost unheard of. In the not-so-far past, entire wars had been waged for these coveted scrolls. If you sign this, Naruto, you are officially the apprentice of the Gama Sennin. You will have duties and responsibilities to attend to. Do not sign this unless you are fully prepared for everything that it entails. Naruto was still shocked. What all does it entail? Jiraiya, still holding the large scroll, began to explain. As a Sennin, you are at the direct call of the Hokage. You answer only to him and to yourself. Naruto looked down at the scroll. Are Sasuke and Sakura going to receive summons too? Jiraiya set the scroll down on the earth in front of him. I believe they will. I also believe that after the Chunin exams, you will be sent out into the world, much like the Sannin were when we were your age. Which is why I want to make sure that you are prepared. Naruto looked up at the man. Prepared for what? A war with sound? Jiraiya nodded his head. That among other things. Naruto, looking back down at the scroll. I would like to sign the scroll, sensei. Jiraiya nodded his head and unrolled the scroll. There were only a few other signatures on the scroll, including the Yandame's and Jiraiya's. Jiraiya showed Naruto the proper way to sign it, and then the hand seals that were necessary. Once Naruto had the seals down, he brought Naruto to a large cliff that overlooked the surrounding area. Before you try the summoning, I want to share one more thing with you. He motioned for Naruto to sit down on a log and sat down beside him. The moon peers down on a diseased world. There is no cure for the disease. An entire race walks mindlessly into destruction. Only a man of colossal power would be able to prevent the inevitable. But he can never do it alone, Naruto. Every story must eventually come to an ending, but it is solely up to you to decide what that ending will be. All that I know is that when I meet my maker, I plan to do so with my head held high, knowing that I did everything that I could to be a good man. Naruto stared at Jiraiya for a minute before Jiraiya stood back up. Forgive an older man's ramblings. Let's try out that summoning, shall we? Sasuke, come over here. Sasuke disappeared in a blur of black and appeared next to his interim sensei. You're a strong and youthful Sasuke-kun, but before I can teach you the final pieces of what I have to offer, we have to finish refining your basics. Sasuke looked almost astonished. Basics? I've done nothing but practice the basics since I was a child. I'm one of the strongest taijutsu and kenjutsu users in the village now. Guy's face became serious. The stronger swordsman does not necessarily win. It is speed. Speed of hand, speed of mind. Those will win the battle. Sasuke looked skeptical, so Guy took the opportunity to push the message home. Fine then, we will set your sword and Sharingan against my Goken, Iron Fist, and see which is better. Sasuke was astonished. How do you know that I have even activated my Sharingan? Guy laughed. I am no fool, Uchiha Sasuke. Sarutobi would not seal your eyes behind that mask unless your Sharingan was active. Sasuke brought his hand up to his face and slowly removed the mask. Unlike Naruto or Sakura, he rarely took his mask off when he was technically off duty. The constant darkness gave him a constant reminder that he was not yet strong enough. The skin below the mask was pale. The hair that had fallen below it was matted to his forehead, but his eyes were bright red with 3 spinning tomo in each one. Fully developed, and at such a young age, you truly are a prodigy. I am amazed that you keep them covered so often. Sasuke shook his head and denied the statement vehemently. No, these eyes are the Uchiha's greatest strength and our greatest weakness. With them my brother killed the entire clan, and because of the clan's focus on the eyes, they were all too weak to stop him. Guy nodded his head. A wise choice then, but they are a trump card, and I want you to be fully prepared. Guy slowly bent down and pulled back his leg warmers, revealing a set of training weights. He carefully unclasped each set and placed them on the ground. He then took off his Jounin flak vest, revealing even more weights. He took those off and set them down next to the ones already on the ground. Sasuke slowly drew the ninjato from his back and assumed his ready stance. Guy took out a single blank scroll and held it out in front of him. I'll throw this scroll into the air. When it touches the ground, we will begin. With that, Guy tossed the scroll high into the air. After several tense moments, it began its descent back to the earth. Seeing that it was past its apex, Sasuke stared hard at his opponent, his eyes taking in every detail about his stance, where his weaknesses were, where it was best to strike, and where he was likely to strike. As the scroll came to the ground, he gripped his sword tightly, a small bead of sweat dripping down his face. And then the scroll touched the ground. He's gone, was the only intelligent thought to go through Sasuke's mind as the green man in front of him disappeared in a small blur. Catching movement out of the corner of his eye, he was astounded to see Guy's fist only inches away from his face, without him having even noticed. Sasuke managed to block, but the force behind the blow was staggering and it sent him sprawling to the ground. He rolled with the force and came back up in his stance, but his sensei was already upon him. With a flick of his wrist, Guy sent Sasuke's blade flying across the small clearing, only stopping when it had become embedded up to the hilt in a tree. The battle was short but brutal. Guy single-handedly destroyed Sasuke's defenses, and only using the most basic of taijutsu. There were no fancy tricks, no ninjutsu or weapons. Just quick jabs and kicks that were so fast that even Sasuke's eyes were barely able to track him. In short order, Sasuke was lying on his back facing the blue skies above him. Guy's face appeared in his peripheral vision. You lack speed and determination, Sasuke. I can train you to be faster, but I cannot make you determined. Sasuke was silent as he listened to Guy talk. He had long since noticed that outside of his fits of youthfulness and springtime, he was incredibly insightful. He was right, of course. Sasuke still wanted to kill his brother, but even he acknowledged that it was no longer with the same single-mindedness that it had been for so many years. His teammates had tempered that out of him. What do you want from me? He shouted as loud as his battered body would allow for. Guy seemed amused. What do you want for yourself? Sasuke was silent for a moment. My entire life I devoted myself to becoming stronger so that I could kill my brother. I trained in the only thing that I thought might be his weakness. I did everything that every sensei that I had ever had told me to do. I was praised by my teachers and girls, and vilified by the other guys. But it made no difference. The only thing that mattered was becoming stronger, strong enough to do what all of my clan could not. Sasuke's hand tightened, gripping a handful of dirt and grass. Then I graduated, top of my class overall, and highest taijutsu score since the academy modified the training programs. I was put into ANBU, with Sakura and Naruto. I didn't really like either of them, but they were strong enough to serve a purpose. I had intended to use them as mere stepping stones until something better came to me. Sasuke clenched his eyes shut as a single tear attempted to invade his vision. Then Sarutobi came along and gave us those damn masks. His hand moved to his belt, where the mask was still securely located. For years, I hid my Sharingan behind a genjutsu, not letting anyone know that I had achieved it. I would study a scroll and embed the katas into my mind and practice them relentlessly. I watched any sword fight that I could and practiced. I was becoming stronger, and then in one fell swoop, that old bastard took it away. He made me weak. Sasuke was growing a little hysterical. For the first time since I was a young child, I was forced to rely on others. It was more shameful than I could have ever imagined. But it wasn't just me. The more I worked with my teammates, the more I realized that we all were relying on each other, and that when I would fail to communicate with them, we failed as a whole. For 6 months, Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto, and Harino Sakura had utterly ceased to exist. Instead, there was only the team. Apart we had been rendered useless, but together we were more powerful than ever. His hand fell off the mask and back onto the grass beneath him. Above head, a few clouds lazily floated across the sky. When we graduated, Hokage-sama told us, "When you cannot walk, you crawl. And when you find that you can no longer crawl, then you find someone to carry you." Looking back on the time we spent together training, I realized that we had all fallen down and were unable to continue, but we carried each other. Sasuke sighed and took a deep breath to try to calm himself. "You asked me why I pushed myself, why I fought." A small laugh escaped his lips and a small smile lit up his normally stoic features. "I fight because I hope that tomorrow will be better than today, because there are things that are left in this world left fighting for. I fight for my teammates and the memory of my family. My teammates are the only family that I have left, and as long as they stand by me, I will fight by theirs." Guy nodded his head. "A good answer, Sasuke. I will endeavor so far as I am able to help you see that dream come true." He laughed a little as he stared at the rather pitiful sight of Sasuke lying on the ground. "You know, Sasuke, there was a time that I was surrounded by hate. The war and my father had taken everything they could from me. It wasn't until after the war that the fourth Hokage talked some sense into me," he told me. "Guy, it is only when you let go of who you are that you can become what you were meant to be." Sasuke was silent for a moment. "Do you think he was right?" Guy nodded. "I like to think so." Without saying another word, Guy slowly bent down and picked up Sasuke and began carrying him back to the campsite. "Hey Guy-sensei." Guy looked down at Sasuke. "Hmm?" Sasuke closed his eyes. "Thank you, but if you ever tell my teammates what I said, I'll kill you myself." Guy burst out laughing. "Tomorrow, Sasuke, I have a special gift from the Sandaime to give you, a summoning scroll that was given to him by one of his oldest adversaries and most respected friends." Sasuke, barely holding on to consciousness, asked, "Who was that?" Guy leapt up to the trees and began making his way back to camp. "Have you ever heard of a man named Hanzo?" Sakura was out in a large field that was normally reserved for the Hokage and her apprentice Shizen. As it stood, she was training every morning with the Hokage on advanced chakra control and medical techniques, and in the afternoon Shizen would swap with Tsunade and go over more advanced genjutsu. The days were long and the training hard, but her skills in the fields had grown more than she had imagined possible. Sakura was currently sparring against the Godame. Granted, if it had been a real fight, Tsunade would have beaten her in a second, but in a friendly spar, Sakura was able to hold her own for at least a little while. "Tsunade Shosho," Sakura called out in order to get her master's attention. Tsunade stood up from her fighting stance and waited for Sakura to ask whatever it was that she wanted. "Do you think that I could try out a new technique that I have been working on?" Tsunade nodded her head, giving her the go-ahead. Sakura smiled as she withdrew 2 small vials of some dark yellow liquid. Tsunade watched them closely. "Poison?" she thought to herself. "It looks like a strong sedative more than a poison if the color is anything to go by." Sakura channeled chakra around her hands in order to create the chakra scalpels that her, and so many other medic nin were fans of using. However, that's where the similarities stopped. As soon as the scalpels formed, she crushed the small vials in each hand. Using her chakra, she kept the poison carefully dispersed and inside the scalpels. Shizen was watching from the sidelines. "She's using her chakra to keep the poison from coming into contact with her own skin and distributed within the scalpel. If an enemy was to be hit with that, it would be devastating. She could lethally poison them without ever having touched them." Shizen was right, of course. That had been the whole idea behind the technique. When Sakura had first learned the scalpel technique, she was amazed by its ability to cut internal organs and tendons without ever having to truly come in contact with the person. Using the medical knowledge that she had learned from Tsunade, she learned that it was possible to use chakra to pull poison outside of someone's bloodstream, so why wouldn't it be possible to use chakra to put it in? The idea was simple enough, but actually doing it was a completely different thing. The focus that was necessary was incredible. It took several weeks of working on it before she could maintain her focus on the fight and still keep the poison in suspension. Sakura took off running at her opponent. Along with medic techniques, Tsunade had been trying to teach Sakura her extreme strength techniques, although it had only been partially successful. As it stood, Sakura just didn't have the necessary chakra reserves to use the technique for an extended period of time. Tsunade kept a close eye on where those chakra scalpels were throughout the spar. Any punch or block that Sakura used was used to deliver a strong dose of the sedative that laced her hands. Tsunade, however, was not easily beaten. She was fully capable of healing herself from the poison just as fast as Sakura could deliver it. Tsunade dodged another jab from Sakura's left hand, only to feel the world lurch horribly. Doing a slightly jerky jump backwards, Tsunade looked over the situation. Sakura was standing about 30 feet away with a small grin on her face as she watched her sensei wobble a little on her feet. Did she hit me with the poison when I wasn't paying attention? She began a rapid self-medical scan, trying to locate wherever it was that Sakura had hit her with the poison. After a couple of seconds, Tsunade smirked. Clever girl. You used a genjutsu that mimics a common effect of the poisons, didn't you? It was really more of a comment than a question. Sakura nodded her head. I call it Dokuga, Poison Fang. It's still very basic right now, but I use the poisons as the main offense while simultaneously casting small genjutsu with sounds that mimic the poison's effects. That way they think they have been poisoned when they haven't, and way they have they won't know if it's a genjutsu or the poison. Tsunade nodded. You're going to be a nightmare to fight with that kind of technique. Since the poison is held in suspension by your chakra, you don't even have to break the skin, making it much harder to tell if you actually hit them or not. Tsunade smiled. I like it. Tsunade stood still for a second while she stared intently at the young pink-haired girl in front of her. It was true. Sarutobi had forged them into a magnificent team and weapon. Now it fell to her and the others to refine them, make them perfect. According to Jiraiya, Naruto had already signed the Toad's contract and taken the first step towards being considered the newest Gama-Sennin. Then Guy had reported in the other day saying that he had taught Sasuke the Omote Range in order for him to channel the necessary chakra to perform his own summoning. He was unable to summon the boss like Naruto had, but he did summon one of the greater summons, which is almost unheard of from someone as young as them. She planned on having Sakura sign her own summoning contract, but she knew that once the contract was signed, Sakura would be targeted on any battlefield that she entered. No one wanted a second coming of the Sannin. Their summons allowed them to wreak incredible havoc on battlefields. The pink-haired girl was just entering her teenage years, already beginning to blossom into a beautiful young woman. Tsunade had even admitted to Shizen the previous day that Sakura and her team were much stronger than her own team had been in their youth. Come over here, Sakura, I have a proposition for you. Jiraiya was sitting next to his young charge overlooking the deep valley that was several thousand feet below them. Both of them were smoking from almost identical pipes. I told you it would grow on you, Gaki. Naruto exhaled a small puff of smoke. It's relaxing. Jiraiya nodded his head. Tomorrow, you'll have to go back to Konoha to meet up with your team. I've got to go to the border to check up on something and should return within the month. You know your way back. Naruto nodded and pointed in Konoha's general direction. I go south till the mountains end and the forests begin. I should be back within a couple days. Jiraiya reached into his pocket and withdrew a small scroll. Swiping some blood along the seal inside, he withdrew a small package and handed it to Naruto. This is a gift from the Sandaime. He asked me to give it to you before you return to Konoha. Naruto opened the plain brown paper wrappings to reveal a white cloak with the kanji for Iwasaru on the shoulder. Along the back was a black leather holster that was made to hold his nodachi. Naruto was awed. A white cloak in Ambu meant that you were the elite. It was normally only reserved for veteran captains. I had to make my own modifications, of course. He turned the cloak over and showed Naruto the left shoulder contained the kanji for oil, the same as the one on the Sannin's Hittite. Your teammates will have one similar to it as well, with only minor modifications made by their own senseis. Jiraiya stood up. Well, I need to go, remember your promise though. Sometime you will need to return here and finish your training with the toads. Naruto nodded. As if I'd let him forget it. Naruto laughed. Come on, Gamakichi, you know I always keep my promises. Sitting beside Naruto was a large orange toad, not much larger than a small basketball, also smoking from a small pipe. Naruto stood up and donned the mask and cloak that Sarutobi gave him. The large toad leapt up onto his shoulder. Come on, Aniki, Konoha is waiting for us. Naruto placed his nodachi into the sheath on his back. Well, it wouldn't do to keep them waiting now, would it? With that, Naruto leapt off the cliff and began running down the steep slope towards the village. Jiraiya was left standing on the large cliff. "He's a good man, Jiraiya, he will make the toads and the village proud." Jiraiya turned around and faced the gargantuan toad that was situated behind him. "I know Gamabunta, but he's still innocent and I cannot help but feel that I have fed him to the wolves." Tsunade was sitting in her office with several jounin looking over the final plans for the upcoming Chunin finals. The finals were scheduled to take place less than a week away, but something was bothering her. "Did Anko tell you anything of importance before she blacked out?" Kakashi shook his head. "Nothing that we didn't already know. She was notified by a couple of Chunin about the dead grass team. She immediately recognized the technique as one of Orochimaru's and took off after him into the forest. The Chunin notified the nearby Umbu patrol that I was leading, and we took off in pursuit. We sensed a large amount of chakra being used, but it stopped almost a full minute before we arrived at the scene." Tsunade nodded. She had heard the story several times, but it still didn't make any sense to her. "Does anybody have an idea of why Orochimaru was running around through the second phase of the exams? It makes no sense to me at all. He showed up, impersonated a genin for only God knows how long, and then just up and leaves after only knocking out a jounin." Sarutobi was sitting in the corner of the room listening quietly. "It's possible that he was just testing out our village's defenses, spout some random jounin in the back of the office." Sarutobi cut in. "That is a possibility, but highly unlikely. Orochimaru was never one to take unnecessary risks like that. If that's all he wanted, he would have sent in a team, not gone himself. No, if I had to take a guess, I would say he was looking for something." Kakashi straightened himself from the wall that he had been leaning on. "Makes as much sense as any other idea that we've come up with, but do you have any idea what he was looking for?" Sarutobi tapped out his pipe and went about repacking it. "I cannot say for certain, but if I had to make a guess, I would say he came to give someone the cursed seal." There was a small gasp that resounded throughout the room. Only a few of the younger jounin seemed oblivious to what the old man was talking about. Tsunade set the file that outlined the attack on Anko down on her desk. "What makes you think that, sensei?" Sarutobi shrugged his shoulders. "Like I said, I can't be sure, but it's the only reason that I can think of that he would come in himself. Anything else that he could possibly do, he could do remotely through an insurgent. Orochimaru is nothing if not cautious." Tsunade nodded her head as she remembered her years working with the snake Sannin. It was true. He would never put himself in the way of danger unless it was absolutely necessary. Even if he was just testing the village's defenses, he would rather send an entire army to their deaths than risk any injury to himself. "So assuming that we're right, and he came into the village to place the seal on somebody, who was he trying to find?" Sarutobi was the first to answer again. "Given his obsession with jutsu and the age group that he purposefully infiltrated, I would be willing to bet that was after Uchiha Sasuke." Tsunade nodded her head. "That makes the most sense, I suppose, so we will go with that for now. Until I tell you all further, begin making any preparation that you have for the upcoming attack from the sound." One by one, all the jounin began making their way out of the Hokage's office and back into the village to begin more preparations. Sarutobi, however, walked towards the desk, limping heavily and using a cane to support his weight. Very few in the village knew that he was in fact uninjured, and he intended to keep it that way. The fact that he attacked the Chunin exams looking for Sasuke proves that he doesn't know where Sasuke is. Which means no one knows where Sasuke, Naruto, or Sakura are. Tsunade pulled out a bottle of sake along with 2 small cups. "I suppose that is one good thing about this whole fiasco. Hopefully it will remain unknown for a while longer. The last thing that team needs is for my rogue teammate to target them. They may be good, but they are nowhere near the level that they would need to be to pose a challenge to him." Sarutobi nodded his head. "Indeed, but the question is, what do you plan to do with the team now that you know Sasuke is being targeted?" Tsunade sighed. What should she do? Her first instinct was to hide the team away for a couple of months again, while the trouble passed. But with war between the Leaf and Sound brewing, she couldn't just ignore a very strong team of Umbu. They could prove vital in the defense of the city. However, putting the team out on the front line would increase the odds of being found by the enemy and destroyed. Word was already spreading about this new group of mysterious Umbu called the Sannin, but no one had any clue as to their identities. It helped that they had never failed a mission, so very few even knew what they looked like even in their uniforms. "I'll keep them active, but I don't want them to play an integral part in the city's defenses if we can prevent it. The odds of one of them being recognized, especially Naruto or Sasuke, are too great. Sarutobi nodded in agreement. When is Naruto expected to return to Konoha? Tsunade took a sip of the hard rice wine before answering her old teacher. According to the Jiraiya, he should be back within the day, barring any unforeseen problems. I would give the team a day off, but since we are in a state of impending invasion, that's not an option. The best I can do is to put them on standby for a day or two. Sarutobi chuckled. I honestly doubt that they will care about the day off or not. I mean, in all honesty, every time you've given them time off, we end up calling them in early anyways. Naruto was around 20 miles outside the village when the meeting with the Jounin was taking place. He moved silently through the thick canopy of the ancient trees that Konoha was known for. His white cloak stayed miraculously clean throughout the entire journey back to the village. Jiraiya said that there were seals sewn into the fabric that prevented dirt from sticking to the cloth, which seemed like a waste of time to Naruto, but not having to wash the cloak was a plus. The cloak was truly one of the greatest honors that the Hokage could bestow to an Anbu. In the literal sense, it made no difference in rank. Most people outside of Anbu thought the cloak was given to the Anbu when they were made a captain. While it is true that there have only been a handful that attained the captain rank without receiving a white cloak, that was not what the cloak meant. No, what the white signified was that the Hokage implicitly trusted the ones who wore the cloak and that she held them in high esteem. His title, Iwazuru, was proudly stitched into the cloak, along with the kanji for oil. Both served as warning to anyone who crossed his path that not only was he elite, but also trained by one of the Sannin. Other than his cloak, the only other visible articles were his mask and sword. The dark black sheath of the Nodachi stood out on his back, along with the bright blue spiral on the sheath. In the distance he could see a group of about 6 children walking down the road at a rather slow pace. Naruto paused on one of the large trees to watch the group as they ran about. After a couple of moments it dawned on him that the group was most likely a batch of academy students being trained in wilderness survival. Sure enough, after a couple seconds of searching he could make out the Chunin who was watching over them to make sure none of them got into something they couldn't handle. Since the Chunin wasn't actively participating in the class, that meant that they must be near the end of their survival training and were trying to make it on their own for a couple of days while the instructors watched. The group was of course left with the impression that the instructor had left and that they were supposed to make their own way back to the village by themselves. Naruto took a moment to remove the flask of water from his belt and take a long draught of the cool liquid. Now that he was out of the higher mountains, the air was considerably warmer. That and it hadn't rained in at least 2 weeks now. It may have been the onset of winter in the northern mountains, but further south summer was just coming to an end. With a sigh he placed the flask back into its holster and prepared to go around the group when something caught his eye. The Chunin had just fallen out of his tree and crumpled to the ground. The class was startled by the sudden appearance of their sensei. After a couple of seconds one of the girls screamed. The Chunin had a kunai embedded in his skull. The next several moments happened quickly. 3 shinobi in dark gray Chunin uniforms leapt out, soon followed by an older jounin. All 4 wore the symbol of Kumogakure with a single line scratched through the metal. Missing Nin, Naruto thought darkly. He held traitors in deep contempt. After all, the 9th layer of hell was reserved solely for traitors. The 4 men took positions around the class. The jounin was the first to speak. Who among you is the one known as Hyuga Hanabi? The group huddled closer together and clutched their small kunai desperately. They may have been ninja in training, but none of them looked to be any older than 7 or 8. Come on, we don't have all day, shouted one of the Chunin. Naruto made a single seal and quietly said, Kagebunshin no Jutsu. With a few hand signs he motioned for the 10 solid clones to encompass the group as quietly as possible. As he got close he slowly slid his Nodachi from its sheath and held it lightly in his hands while he waited for his clones to get into position. After several tense moments while the jounin interrogated the group of young children relentlessly in an effort to discover the whereabouts of the young Hyuga, the jounin grew quiet. I will ask you one more time, where is Hyuga Hanabi? When none of the students answered him, the 3 Chunin pulled out the slightly longer kunai that Kumo favored. They looked like they were about ready to strike when suddenly the jounin motioned for them to stop. We're being watched, feel free to come out and show yourself, Konoha scum. Naruto was hesitant to move and give up his location, but at the same time all of his clones were understanding orders not to attack until he did, so none of them would walk out unless he told them to. Come out or we will start killing the students one by one. With a sigh Naruto stood up and leapt into the gap between the students and the missing Nin. He clutched his sword tightly in his hands as he prepared to defend the students. An Umbu, said the Jounin with a slightly crazed look on his face. No wonder I didn't notice you sooner. The Jounin was obviously waiting for Naruto to respond, but when nothing but silence came, he grew irritated. What's the matter, scum? Too scared to talk? Asked one of the rather cocky Chunin to his right. I guess you're about as scary as these worthless students. With a quick snap of his wrist, the Chunin threw a kunai directly at the chest of a young girl in a Chinese shirt that buttoned down the left side. In the blink of an eye, Naruto's sword flashed brightly as he cleanly cut the thrown knife in two. So you do have some skill? The Jounin motioned for the three Chunin to engage him. As the cocky one struck with another kunai, the other two made a few hand signs and yelled. Raitun, Denkuubra Batsu no Jutsu. Lightning release, charge strike. Their short swords suddenly crackled with lighting chakra as they leapt into the fray. Naruto frowned as he felt the two rapidly approach from behind him. He made a quick sign to one of clones before he blocked kunai the Chunin in front of him was trying to stab him with. Suddenly a pair of short swords covered in lighting stabbed through his back, crackling loudly. Too easy, boasted the cocky Chunin. Naruto slowly raised his head to stare at the man in front of him. The man glared at his face when suddenly Naruto erupted in a large explosion of smoke. The smoke cleared after a couple of seconds and the cocky Chunin found both of his teammates lying dead on the ground. Their own swords stuck deep into their left shoulders between the collarbone and shoulder blade. You talk too much, Naruto muttered in the man's ear. The Chunin jumped away trying to put some distance between himself and the Umbu, but he didn't get far. Another clone appeared behind him, blocking the view of the students, and ran his own sword through the Chunin before his jumped back into the trees, taking the Chunin with him. Naruto turned and glared at the Jounin, who had yet to move throughout the entire ordeal. I thought I recognized you, Awazaru. You and your team created quite a stir in Kumo a few months back from what I heard. Took out a team of highly trained Chunin in a matter of seconds and got out of there before our own team could make contact. The man stared at him for a couple more seconds. They say that no one who has ever heard you speak and lived. Is that true, Awazaru? The man's face broke out into a crazed smile. I was going to take the Hyuga to Kumo like my failure of a brother tried to do, but I think your head would be a better prize. With a dismissive wave at the students. Go home to your parents. The students didn't need to be told twice as they all began running towards Konoha as fast as their short legs would carry them. The young girl with the Chinese shirt was the only one who looked back, as if embedding the picture of their savior to her memory. Once of the students were a safe distance away, Naruto applied a small amount of chakra to his mask to allow him to speak to his enemy. While appreciate you letting them go, do not assume that I will give you the same courtesy. The Jounin laughed. Nor did I expect it. I have to admit though, Awazaru, you are shorter than I had imagined. Without another delay, Naruto struck out with his sword. He applied chakra to his limbs to increase his speed and strength. The Jounin drew a shorter ninjato and began parrying Naruto's lightning-fast strikes. The pair danced around the open road for several minutes, rushing forward and clashing their blades in rapid succession before parting again. Sparks filled the air as Naruto's longer sword clashed mightily on the Jounin's shorter ninjato. Seeing a small opening, Naruto swept the ninjato aside and buried his sword deep in the older ninja's stomach. The man grunted in pain for a second, before he laughed. Naruto tried to leap back, but his body was suddenly encased in a gargantuan amount of lightning chakra. His whole body screamed out in pain as the electricity raced along every synapse of every nerve. After what seemed like an eternity, the lightning faded. He knew every one of his clones had dispelled during the attack, leaving him with no backup. His muscles, which had gone rigid as the electricity coursed through his body, suddenly gave out and he crumpled to the ground, smoke rising from behind his mask and cloak, both of which appeared completely undamaged. Naruto heard the crunch of dirt as the Jounin approached from the side. It's called a Rai Bunshin, lighting clone. A boot suddenly appeared in his peripheral vision as the Jounin looked down at him. He could feel the Kyuubi's chakra rapidly healing the burns across his body as his chakra was already starting to return. If you are Konoha's best, then I am amazed that the village has not been destroyed. Without saying a word, Naruto pushed off the ground with his hands and leapt to his feet. The surprised Jounin leapt back and held his sword ready. Slowly Naruto reached up and pulled the hood of his cloak down, revealing his mask. He began channeling an enormous amount of chakra and once again applied a tiny bit to his mask. The Jounin watched in thinly veiled terror as saw the Umbu shake off his most devastating technique like it was almost nothing. Behind his mask, Naruto was furious. That technique had hurt like hell. He was amused though to see the look on the older Jounin's face. He held out his hand and began channeling a ridiculous amount of chakra when he spoke to the Jounin one last time. Yeah, Naruto muttered in a low voice, I'm a shitload of scary. With that said, Naruto struck. Katan Nenetsujigoku, fire release, flames of hell. Suddenly the Jounin's entire world erupted in bright white fire. He heard someone scream for a second before he realized the scream was his own. Odd, he thought as he felt the fire engulf him completely in its scorching embrace. It feels cold. After a minute, Naruto released the jutsu. The sandy soil was a perfect circle of swirled glass. Nothing remained of the Jounin. Naruto slowly walked forward, his feet falling heavily on the earth. He bent down to one knee and retrieved his sword. Stabbing it into the ground, he used it as a crutch to get back to his feet. He frowned as he noticed the slightly bluish steel was scorched. Silently, he placed the sword onto his back and made his way down the trail. Several miles down the road, Naruto felt a presence rapidly approaching him from straight ahead. It was with a sigh of relief that he saw Sasuke in his Mizaru outfit approaching him. He too was proudly wearing a white cloak with Mizaru stitched into the shoulder. On the other side was written, "When I let go of who I am, I become what I might be." Sasuke came to a stop several feet in front of him and looked him over through his activated mask. "You look like you need a band-aid." Naruto, similarly releasing his own seals on his mask, replied and pointed down the road in the direction that he came from. "Somebody else needs a body bag back down the road." Sasuke chuckled and extended a hand to his teammate. "It's good to have you back, Naruto. Did the students meet up with you?" Sasuke nodded as they began walking down the trail at a rather sedate pace. It was obvious to him that Naruto was tired from travel and then fighting. "Yeah, they met up with Guy-sensei and myself a little ways down the trail. Guy stayed with the students while I went to see if you needed any help." Naruto chuckled. "You need to work on your timing then, team, you're a little late." The pair walked in silence for several more miles towards the gates of Konoha before they saw anyone else. Sakura dropped down from the branches of a tall tree, landing directly in front of the pair. She too wore a white cloak with Kikazaru embroidered on one side, the other bore the word Dokamushi, poisonous slug. She stared at the group for a second before walking over and gave both them a brief hug. "Okura Nasai, welcome home," she said softly. She released them both and began walking on Naruto's other side. The trio continued at a rather sedate pace. It's not every day that you see three Anbu strolling down the middle of a road in broad daylight. Naruto started laughing, not that anyone could hear it. Not wanting to waste the chakra to simply flick the group in front of them off. Sakura smacked him upside the head. "That's no way to greet the Hokage." Tsunade laughed at the group's antics while Sasuke and Sarutobi just shook their heads. "Just meet me in my office already." With that said, the group of five disappeared simultaneously in a swirl of leaves. "Feel free to remove your masks and robes, the office is sealed. Not even a Hyuga would be able to see your faces in here." The three complied, quickly sealing both the masked cloaks inside a small seal hidden somewhere on their person. They took a moment to look each other over, noting the obvious differences. Sakura was wearing a pair of short pink shorts with a white belt, along with a black vest-like top. Lastly, she had a small silver necklace in the shape of a leaf around her neck. Naruto was dressed in his new jumpsuit. It was similar to the old one, just darker. What had been bright orange and white was now burnt orange and black. 6 small scrolls hung along a chain on his right side. Like the other two, his hatayate covered the Anbu tattoo on his arm. Surprisingly, Sasuke was still dressed the exact same as he was before. He just looked happier. "I'm surprised you're not wearing a green bodysuit, Sasuke team," Naruto remarked. Sasuke turned and glared at his teammate. "Don't remind me that crazy sensei actually bought me one."